I bet that's such a trigger phrase for such a gift for like all of you guys. Kamusta naman po yung lunch? Masarap ba? Glad to hear it. Okay, so mukha namang we're beating the post-lunch fullness lull. May energy pa kayo? May energy pa naman? When I say seminar workshop, you say for who? Tamang-tama. Thank you so much. Okay, so we have 2 more talks for today. So hopefully you guys have questions prepared and are ready to absorb as much knowledge as possible. And to introduce our second speaker for the day, he is a man of multiple means and modes of expression. He is a scriptwriter, a legendary singer. But primarily, he is with us here today in his capacity as a fictionist. His books include Banyaga, A Song of War, An Embarrassment of Riches, Blue Angel, White Shadow, White Lady, and Black Christ. So everyone, let's all give a warm round of applause for our speaker for fiction, Sir Charlson Ong.
Hello, good afternoon. So, mahirap magising, no? So, kaya magbibigay ako ng exercise. We'll have a short exercise. Maybe some of you who have been in my class know this, no? Hindi pa ito workshop, it's just part of the lecture, para interactive, no? I'll give you a line, no? First, you treat it as a first line of a story, maybe, no? And you write maybe, whatever, paragraph. Pag masyadong mahaba, no? Hindi to extended, maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes. At tapos, gawin niyo yung first line, no? And maybe we'll listen to some of what you wrote. No? So this is the line. When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. Okay, so that's the line. Now, maybe you can have 5 minutes or so. Just write anything. Like an opening paragraph, maybe of a story. Okay? Sige. So, okay. Who wants to read? Gusto mo magbasa? Read. So listen to it. Listen to what he wrote and tell me what sort of story he's going to write, or he plans to write, or it sounds like he's writing.
I'm sorry, sir.
Just read.
I just read.
They have to listen. Listen to.
Okay po. When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. 2 years ago, I thought the price of a kilo of rice would go down to 20. But it turned out it's what I had to pay for a quarter. I was even told we'd stand firm on our claims on our shoals, but somebody else built their fence on them. I believed when they said all they wanted was unity, but not until I saw how everything they promised were blown away by revenge trips and forming alliances with the East and tagging teachers as rebels. And yesterday, I thought people united to bring down the dinosaurs with cries for revolution, hands soaked in red, lives sacrificed for hope. But when I read the headlines today, I think the crocodiles knew all along. I don't know how they evolved or devolved. Perhaps the reason is confidential.
What sort of story do you expect? Confidential, ano? What do you think is writing? Okay. What first? What do you think is writing? What sort of story is it? What do you expect? So it's like a realistic story.
It's more of a. I think it's a pun for what's really happening. So the inspiration was from a real story.
So magiging
yeah, it's more of a
realistic siya o
satire.
satire.
Yes, a satire of what's currently happening.
Okay. Oh, read yours.
Okay, now I'm gonna read mine. Good afternoon, Sir Charles. Nice meeting you. When I awake this morning, the dinosaurs were still here, were still there. Impossible. This was the word that I uttered, the shortest I have ever said after more last night. I tried calling my family, but none picked up their phones. I dialed his cell. Fear started to engulf me as I was expecting that it would be cold rings again. Roar! Mattered from the other line. I dropped my phone, panicking, because who would have thought that an animal could press a phone dial? I stared at my broken phone, too broken for it to be fixed by the mechanic I dated a month ago. Roar! I gasped, held my mouth, and looked at the big monster starting to crawl out of my broken phone. It opened its big mouth, ready to eat my head. Shit! I woke up with a bruised man sitting below my bed.
Okay. What do you think is? That was yours afterward. What
I
sort
think
of story?
it's fantasy.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's
What sort of
fantastic.
fantasy? Jurassic Park ba?
Yeah, something like that. Okay.
So it's fantasy. So yung kanina satire. ba?
Satire.
Oh, you.
Okay, this is mine. No? When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. They're not scary at all. Actually, I think they're cute. I just saw them in the books before, but since they invaded my house since the other day, it's like the storybook coming into life in my living room. The T-Rex is particularly interesting for me. how he gave me that friendly gaze as if wanting to start a conversation. If dinosaurs can talk, I'd love to hear their voice. Will it be raspy or croaky? What could be their stories? I want to know how they found my house and what they want from me. When I first saw them the other day, I was overwhelmed. It was like, what the F? It was difficult to move around the house with them. They're big, and their eyes were really watchful. Thank you.
Eko. Ano yung sulat niya?
I think there's an introspection, like there's a reflection or parang still merong touch ng
So, totoong dinosaur?
siguro may mga stuffed toy or yung sa book, sir,
Oo.
na
Stuffed toys.
na nakita niya.
So, anong klaseng story siya? Realistic or hindi siya?
Pwede ring realistic, sir.
Okay, ikaw naman.
This is also the same with the first, but I created a starting start or the beginning of the story with this line. When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. This is News 5. Inflation rate is down to 1.5%. Rice price now at 20 pesos. Secret funds among civilian agencies now removed. Lower and upper house approved. I think I know what I'm hearing. A voice of a man from our old television of ours speaks of the headlines for today. I was smiling. I knew I was smiling. I can feel the C shape of my mouth. Until I woke up. Fuck.
One more. Babalik tayo dyan pag wala nang gagawin.
So, okay, hello. So
What is he writing?
it seems like realism-ish with
Real din, parang realistic.
very realistic fiction.
Okay.
So, okay, this one's mine. When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. Its giant eye loomed outside the window as it peered at my groggy and disheveled form. I could hear its feathers brushing against the foliage of the nearby bush. It chirped or groaned or whatever you could call the sound it made. Good morning, as if saying. Then it retracted its humongous head back, looming above 5 stories high. That was my wake-up call. I suppose I should feed Mako. He loves to start the day with leaves I bioengineered back from extinction.
Sige, last. Ano muna yung, what do you think he's writing? What do you expect from his story?
Very descriptive and tapos may halo pong science.
Ganon. Realistic pa siya or
Yes po.
fantastic? Sige, last.
Before I read my story, this is so bad. Actually, if I'm going to choose between poetry and fiction, I choose poetry. Sira po ako sa fiction. So this is how it goes. When I awoke this morning, the dinosaurs were still there. Ganyan yung sinabi niya sa akin bago niya ako iniwan. Gaya ko, namalayan din kaya ng dinosaur na magiging extinct sila.
Ganon. Okay.
O kaya, baka may leader sila, I think you've heard of this before, na nagsabi, oh, run, dinosaurs, run! Papasok na yung asteroids. Kaso wala siya. Nanonood ng F1 sa Singapore. Yung isa namang pterodactyl, yun, mabilis kumilos, sobrang bilis, isang pagaspas lang ng pakpak niya, nawala agad yung mga kasama niya, pati nga yung confidential fund. Di ko din alam, di ko namalayan. Hala, dilulu moments na naman ako. Eto na naman ako, tumatawa mag-isa. Hala, akala ko nasa tabi kita. Hindi ko namalayan, isang gabi lang palang pagsasama natin at sasabihin mong mahal kita. At pagsapit ng umaga, mawawala ka. Sana nakita ko yung red roars at horny scales mo just to realize when I sleep this evening that the dinosaurs weren't still there anymore.
Love story pala siya. Now, okay. So ano yung insight nyo sa exercise? Anything? You any insight on what happened or the exercise? Ano? Yeah. Okay. So a story can start anywhere, diba? Any line. Of course, the oldest line is once upon a time. So it's always really once upon a time. No? But then the story has to be something kasi nabenta na yun. So now stories can start media res, diba? So it can, any sort of line, no, can begin a story. Right? It can become realistic, unrealistic, fantasy. There are all sorts of stories. So what is, let's say, the basic story? No? By the way, some of these nasabi na niya, no? That what made us different, no, from other species, first is our opposable thumb, and then speech. No? When we discovered, when our forebears learned to speak, then we're able to commune with each other, to forestall danger, and to share stories. No? And in sharing stories, it became a community. And I submit, no, although maybe in the scientific, that it was the telling of stories that allowed us to make that leap of imagination to paint, to draw the paintings in Lascaux and elsewhere. No? That storytelling preceded visual art. Because in storytelling, in being able to, we are the only species, as far as we know, who dream and who can wake to share those dreams. No? And so in telling stories around the campfire, we commune not only with each other, but with our inner world, no? With our spirits, with our gods. And maybe storytelling created that inner world. Maybe it was storytelling that created the inner self. And all our art is a communion between our waking and dreaming selves. No? All art. So there are stories and stories, di ba? And we know that, even in our case, kwentong bayan. So what is the basic story? Ano yung pinaka kwento, di ba? Anecdote. And that's what so in the beginning, as Jimmy said, in the beginning was the word, no, speech. And the story was always king and queen. Not only on Netflix, but around the campfire. So ano yung pinaka basic na story? Yung kwento, di ba? Yung kwento, kaya ang mga estudyante niyo, pati tayo, we're always on TikTok, Facebook. They won't listen to us because they're on their gadgets, di ba? They want to listen to stories. Whatever, gossip. So pinaka-story, pinaka-basic is the anecdote. Ba, nagkwento. So ako, magkukwento. This morning, on the train, I met an old man. Well, older, because I'm not young. An old man who sat beside me. No? Sat beside me, and he was very jittery and very excited, no? Like a boy. And I was uneasy. I felt strange. He wanted to talk to me, but I didn't want to talk to him because my mother always told me not to talk to strangers. But then he said, this is the first time that he had ridden on the train. So I didn't, bakit naman? So first time daw niya. And then he said, because he was afraid falling over on the platform. Diba? He was afraid of falling off the platform when he got on and got off. He said that's impossible. No? But anyway, we just said no. We finally, it turned out we were headed for the same station. So we got off together. I had to help him, and finally, even the guard had to help him because he wouldn't across. So finally, he got off. And then I guided him down the stairs. And at the bottom of the stairs, we were met by a young man who was neatly dressed. Parang nakabarong, he was neatly dressed, and he greeted the old man. And then the old man thanked me, he was profusely, and then said, "Oh, this is my chauffeur." So I was surprised. Can we bring you anywhere? So I said, "No, I'm good because my mother told me not to ride with strangers." So I said, "No, I'm good. I can walk." And then so I stopped, and then I saw them both walk away towards a huge black sedan. No, it's one of those old dinosaurs, maybe a Lincoln Continental or a Cadillac. But I hadn't seen for ages, so I was amazed. And then so I waited. They got into the sedan and drove away. And then I suddenly remembered the hearse that brought my father to the cemetery all those years ago. So that's my anecdote. Do you believe me? Of course, I made up some of it. But so the real thing is that a few days ago, I did get on a train. And then this old man kept on saying that this is the first time he rode on a train. And then when he got there, he wouldn't get off, and the guard had to push him out. You know? So that's the story. But then, okay, yun ang anecdote. Now, the anecdote is just an anecdote, no? Well, we don't expect much from it. It's a good laugh, maybe sometimes. It gives you a feel good. Pero we don't expect much from it, no? Kasi ano ba? I haven't written it down. Every time I tell it, it might change, di ba? You might even tell it, no? And it can change because I haven't. It's oral. I haven't laid claim to it, di ba? I haven't signed it. Hindi pa siya art. It's an anecdote. And of course, many of our old stories are like that. Our inversion because no one has laid claim to it. Diba? So it's an anecdote. So that's the basic, kwento. Diba? Wala pa tayong in-expect na no critic can say it's good or bad kasi wala pa naman akong but still, it plants the seed, no? Of what? We tell stories. We tell what happened and a bit of how, because we want to know why. Diba? In the end, we want to know why, and that's what we're really discussing when we discuss story. Story is really why. You know? Why do we do what we do? Character is destiny. So all story is that. It's character, and character is destiny. Why? Why do we do what we do? That story. Before that, it's anecdote. Okay. So maraming klaseng kwento. You have the anecdote. You have what else? Ano pang mga klase ng mga kwento? Fable. No. So, ano yung fable? So, fable ay usually may mga animals, no? That binibigyan ng human characteristics. Example, of course, the tortoise and the hare, matching. So marami, alam niyo yan. At may moral, di ba? Lagi may moral lesson. Kaya I think may many teachers also laging hinahanapan ng moral lesson, di ba? Kasi yun ang madaling gawin. No? But not all stories are alike, di ba? Hindi naman lahat ay kaagad may moral lesson. No? So medyo, in a way, you deprive the student of thinking. No? Anong moral lesson? Parang parang arithmetic, itong sagot, tapos na. No? So trabahong tamad yan. No? So, but anyway, there are fables, so you should allow them also to appreciate. No? And then merong, may parable. Diba? What are parables? In the Bible, you have the parable of the prodigal son. Diba? Okay. So yung parable, may lesson din. Diba? During the time when very people were literate, everything was oral. No? So, kaya lang ang parable, pwedeng realistic yung sitwasyon. Diba? At tao. Hindi hayop. No? Tao siya. And plausible yung kwento. Diba? Pero meron siyang lesson din. No? Tapos, and then you have the tale. No? You have the fantastic tales. Of course, a fable, you have Aesop, di ba? And then, you have Grimm, di ba? So you have Hans Christian Andersen, you have all these. And today, these days, may mga reinvention, di ba? May mga modern reinvention of those tales. No? There's a book called Caught in the Web, which it's a collection of stories of modern writers rewriting these tales. Even the movies today, if you watch them, ibang-iba na. Diba? Yung mga Huntsman, di ba? Yung mga Snow White ngayon, hindi na Snow White. No, ibang klase na. So stories evolve like everything else. Right? So maraming klaseng kwentong bayan, fable, ganyan. So we're talking here, mostly siguro we're focusing on the modern short story, no? The contemporary short story, which is supposed to be, well, siguro the modern story is more or less started around the 1800s, late 1800s, by the Russians. No? Gogol, Chekhov, Turgenev. There was a writer who says that we all came out from under Gogol's overcoat. Yeah. So, parang yun ang Chekhov. You can all research that. Sa atin, in the Philippines, I think, because of our history, our education, we are very, very much influenced by the American short story. Hemingway, Faulkner, Steinbeck, Welty, you know. So, because of they were taught in school, you know, in the early years. And even the writers in Filipino were very much influenced by them. No? If you read the Agos ng Desierto, sila Edgardo Reyes, Rogelio Sicat, they were influenced by the American short story. So the short story is usually described as something shorter than a novel, you know? Maybe 1,600 words to 20,000. You know? And then and then related yung mga sequences. Medyo unified effect, you know. So alam niyo yan, may nangyayari. It's a prose narrative, you know? Something happens. But there are all sorts of stories, especially in our time. No? It used to be nasa isang lugar lang, the setting, the place. You know. But since we live in a time that people move around and travel a lot, there are all sorts of stories. No? So I think and then anyway, going back to the sample we had earlier, no? Actually, that is my original yan is when he awoke this morning, the dinosaur was still there. It's a line, it's a short story. It's often described as the shortest story written by Augusto Monterroso, a Honduran writer. It's called The Dinosaur. So he has a collection of short stories. Short story, maiksi talaga yung stories. And now, uso na rin uli yun, mga flash fiction. That is called a one-sentence story. It's the shortest story. Now, do you agree that it's a one-sentence story? Why do you think it's a one-sentence story? Yes, elements of the story. What? What are they? May character. Sino yung character? He or I, no? In our I. So there's an I. May point of view. So may I. May dinosaur. So may protagonist. May antagonist. Diba? May point of view. In the example that I gave you. May point of view. May I. First person. Character. May setting. What is the setting? This morning. Here. Diba? This morning or here. May conflict ba? What is the conflict? What is the conflict? When I woke this morning, the dinosaur were still there. Is there conflict? What's the conflict? What's the conflict? What do you think is what do you describe as the conflict? Meron pa siyang conflict? Why? Why is there conflict? There's a struggle? Why is there conflict? Yeah. Okay. So the two things do not belong together. Diba? There's something wrong. They shouldn't be there. Diba? So that's what conflict is. You know? Those two things do not belong together. There's something wrong in the world. There's something wrong in this world. Diba? In this world this fictional world that we have. You know? Because one thing, the dinosaur is not supposed to be there. If you don't know what dinosaurs are, then you don't know. Diba? But we share common knowledge. Diba? And of course, there's no story if there's no common knowledge. Diba? You have to share common knowledge. Diba? You all agree what dinosaurs are. What they are. So, bakit may dinosaur? Diba? So there's conflict, and that's what conflict is. Things don't belong together. So there is a crisis. There's a crisis. It has to be resolved. So that's what stories are supposed to do. They must resolve the crisis that the writer has created in the world. So that's what stories are, and those are the basic elements of it. Kailangan meron kang point of view, character, setting. So yun, ang tawag doon ay the shortest. The shortest. It's a one-sentence story. But don't tell your kids because your students will write one-sentence stories. So make them expand the stories. So yun, no? And then, no pa. So, I gave you some samples to read because in the stories today, iba-ibang kwento na, no? There are many sorts of stories. No? So there are, I think, what I would call yung maximalist stories. No? So by the word, yung maximalist, What do you think they are? Pag maximum. Maraming nangyayari. Di ba? Maraming nangyayari, maraming characters, maraming movement, di ba? Maraming movement, no? For example, yung management of grief, no? If you have read it, I hope you have. It's one of those stories that move, diba? Physically, gumagalaw siya. Ang daming eksena, diba? And it really moves where? So ano yung unang eksena niya? When the story opens, we are in Shaila's kitchen. Nasaang bansa? Have you read the story? Who has read it? Who read the story? Binasa niyo ba? Who else? This is important because this is part of the thing that we're talking about. Okay, who read the stories? I think they were sent to you. Wala. Yung management of grief. Did you read it? It wasn't sent? Howie, did you send the story? Did you? No, it was the management of grief, di ba? Ganun ba yun? Aren't they in the fiction group? So, sino ang... I'm sorry, I didn't know. So, sino ang nakabasa? The fiction group. Absent lahat? Sino pa? Have you read it? Sinong nakabasa? It was reset nga because I wanted you I wanted to discuss it. So sino sa fiction group, sino ang nakabasa? O ngayon lang pala binabasa? Okay, so yung kwento ay, it starts in Canada, and then it goes to India, no? And then, yeah, well, it's a story na they meet in the home of Shaila. No? It's a point of view of Shaila, who is an Indian Canadian. No? So they're in her kitchen. It's her point of view. She's talking about people, strangers in her kitchen, because they're all gathered because there was a plane, no, from India that exploded. No? So mga kamag-anak nila na on board. So that's the first scene. And then they go to Ireland to identify bodies, no? And then anyway, you can read it, no? But I'm just giving you a summary. They go to Ireland to identify bodies, and Shaila goes back to India, no? To Calcutta, because she's now a widow, no? Her husband isn't on the plane. She goes to Calcutta. She's from a rich family. No? So pumunta siya sa ashram. Traditionally, she's now widow, a shrine, and then she hears a voice. She thinks it's the voice of her husband telling her to move on. So bumalik siya sa Canada, becomes an activist of sorts. No? And then actually she's being asked by the social worker in Canada to be an interpreter, between kasi there's a Sikh couple, an Indian couple, who refused to sign, because they said they cannot accept that their son is dead. They have to mourn. They cannot mourn their son kasi bawal sa kanila. So hindi sila naniniwala. So she's being asked to make them do it, sign, para the government can give them the benefits and then the insurance of the son. Otherwise, hindi pwede. Although they're entitled to it. They're the beneficiaries. So she tries, but actually it's a Sikh couple, and sa totoo lang the suspect ng bombing are Sikhs. But anyway, the social worker has to do this. It's her job. That's why it's called management, because she thinks, well, that the modern bureaucracy thinks everything can be managed, even grief, which cannot be managed because people react differently. Diba? So in the end, she refuses, and then she leaves, and then the ending is, I wanted to use this example because the ending is can be ambivalent, can be ambiguous. Have you read the story? Okay. So the ending can be ambiguous. Because she heard the voice, so she came back. So ayaw niya na maging interpreter. And the ending, she's in a park. She's in a park. She picks up a package. She's been writing her parliamentarian. Finally they have accepted that it's a bomb. So anyway, accepted na yan. So she's in the park, and then she hears the voice again. Move on. So she leaves the package in the bench, and walks away. So when I first read that story, so I thought, well, at least naman, it's a positive ending. It's moving on, because that's my bias. That's what I wanted to read. Coming from my background. But then years ago, and this was a story written before 9/11. But then around 2000, I was in Singapore, and then I was asked to teach a class in fiction. So I had them read the story. It's written by Bharati Mukherjee, who has passed on. And si Monteroso pala also passed on this year. He was 81 years old. So Bharati Mukherjee has passed on. She's from India and then immigrated to Canada, to the US. So there was this student who was Malaysian, actually, but Indian na Malaysian and Muslim. But she said, "Oh, but that's a terrifying ending." Diba? So nabigla ako, bakit? So what is that package? Why did she leave it on the bench? Right? So then, what is it? And if you look at the form of the story, kasi parang cycle siya nga, di ba? It starts in Canada, travels, goes back to Canada. If it starts where it ends, then it's violent, di ba? It could be. So ano yung package niya? Bakit siya? And then all the while, she seems to be very restrained, di ba? Nagkukwento siya. But actually, she's in mourning kasi her own husband is dead. And yet she's this restraint, kaya siya ginagamit, ng Canadian government because siya yung naintindihan nila. Her reaction is something they understand. They don't understand what the other Indians are doing. They won't sign, they want whatever. But if you look at the structure of the story, pwedeng yun. her moving on means something darker, right? Be something darker. So after that, na-realize ko, no? I brought myself, my own history and my biases into the story. And it took someone else from another culture, another situation to see that, no, that it could be a very different reading. Yeah. Someone from could read it differently. And then, so I realized, no, well, good stories can accommodate, diba? These readings. Pwedeng, ano yan, positive, pwedeng hindi. She could not, in the end, manage her own grief. She has become a terrorist, diba? So every time, sa klase, later on, after that realization, I asked the students, so what do you think of the ending? Is it a positive ending or is it a dark ending? And iba-iba, no? Usually it's split, no? And I think the first reading is, most of us, most Filipinos would not see that. No? They would think, oh, so it's a chummy-chummy ending, it's Hollywood ending. But then if you ask them, but you said the structure was cyclical, you said this and that, why does it end that way? What is that package? Diba? Yun ang ambivalent. It's not mentioned where it came from. She just did an errand and left the package on the park. Could be her baggage, could be something else, right? So that's one of the things that stories can do. Diba? Disrupt you. Diba? So stories are supposed to discomfort the comfortable and comfort the miserable, right? And so yun, no? So that's in a way a maximalist story kasi gubagalaw siya, no? It moves. And then the movement corresponds to yung movement ng moral psychology, you know, ng character from stages of grief. Denial, anger, and acceptance. So, yung mga kwento, no? You don't know. May mga ambivalence, and a rich story can accommodate those. Now, the other sort of story that you encounter is the minimalist. You know? Sabi ko nga yung, again, I haven't sent if you read it. No? Yung cathedral, no? The cathedral. One of the, and of course the other story I sent was yung kay Greg Brillantes, no? Which is also a very maximalist story, although it was written long ago, you know, before martial law. It's called Janis Joplin, The Revolution. Mahabang yung title. And at that time, Greg Brillantes was already using Filipino lines, no? Yung sa kanyang kwento, yung mga Pilipino na siya ginagamit. So it was about this guy who was a journalist before martial law was created, was declared, you know. And then looking back, he's martial law na yung ano, he's now an advertising executive, remembering those times. So the other kind of stories that you'd probably encounter are the minimalist story. You know? Yung minimalist, by the definition, is shorter, less characters, usually. Isang setting. Isang setting, everything happens there. Raymond Carver, you know, is one of the American fictionists who is known for that. You know. And the story that I have, anyway, if you haven't read it, read it. It's online. It's called Cathedral. Cathedral, it's a first person rin siya, no? Point of view ng isang mama in the Midwest whose wife has a friend who is blind. A blind man who she has been, parang best friend niya, she's been corresponding for years, dati niyang boss. Ganun, no? And this man's wife just passed. So dumating yung, blind man. Actually, nasa tone lagi ang kwento, no? In the eye story, the eye is really story of the eye, no? So, we talk of text, no? Text is what you have. Yung nakasulat, no? And then you have subtext, which is what is actually being said. No? So may teksto ka, may subtext. Ano talaga ang ibig sabihin? No? It's always the why. What is really being said, no? By the story? What is being told? No? So if you read the story, then you will know, you can tell through the tone kung anong klaseng narrator ito, no? There's his biases, he's sort of a redneck, sabi niya, how can you be friends with a blind man who doesn't see your face? So anyway, the blind man comes and nagjut sila, ganyan. And then so finally they're watching TV, and it's about the cathedrals, cathedrals. And then sabi niya, do you know what a cathedral is? Sabi niya, well, I hear about it, what they're saying. But then, okay, kumuha ka ng papel, and you draw, the blind man puts his hand over, narrator's hand, and follows while he draws, So he makes him show him what the cathedral is. So yun yung epiphany. In stories like that, we talk of epiphany. Ano yung epiphany? It's the revelation. What do you find out in the end? So it's an epiphany story that again, culturally we can relate to because about cathedral, which is very Catholic, about the blind man who teaches you how to see in the end, like a prophet. It's like a biblical prophet who comes in from the cold and all that. And so these are stories, yung mga minimalist stories, usually you have to understand the context. You have to share what is a cathedral and what does it imply. All these things. So there are other stories I send you. You can read them. One of them is Cargo by Anthony Tan. It was written also many years ago, 20 years ago, I think. Yun naman is set in, it's written in English, but it's set in Holo. So it's Tausug. Yung piloto is Tausug. So I like the story. The reason I also is because I actually plan to do a movie based on this story. Hindi natuloy kasi na pandemic. Na-lockdown yung project. So before I did, if you know yung Tanabata's Wife, I made a movie out of it. It's the story naman sa Baguio. Baguio. It's a classic Philippine love tale. So again, you should read the stories, make your students read them. Itong Cargo naman ay, ang kwento niya is, itong piloto, natausog. So yung fast boat, it's still there. Meron pa rin ganun. If you're in Zamboanga or Sulu, yung barter trade, actually may mga fast boat that you can invest in it and then pupunta yan sa Sabah, bibili ng cargo, babalik, parang duty free yan. It's a kind of duty free na hindi masyadong pinapansin ng gobyerno. So piloto siya. One day, sumama yung kanyang pamangkin, pamangkin sa asawa, who's a hothead. So he allows him, sabi ng wife niya, para meron namang trabaho ito. So they went on boat. In the middle of the night, he hears gunshots. when he comes down, nakita niya that everyone is dead, no? This, yung pamangkin niya pinatay lahat. Pinatay lahat. So, bakit mo ginawa yan, di ba? It's a shock, no? This is tausug. This is a warrior culture. You don't do that. It's a death sentence. Eh, sabi niya kasi, iniinsulta ko, tinatawag kong baboy. Yeah. So anyway, yun na. Everyone is dead. Sabi niya, kung hindi mo ako tulungan, papatayin kita. Pero alam niya he can't do that because he cannot pilot the boat. Diba? So nung nag-CR yung kanyang pamangkin, naghanap siya ng weapon. Nag-struggle sila, they struggled and then he kills the pamangkin, no? So after that, he's left with a cargo of corpses. Lahat patay na, diba? He's really alone. And what does he do? Diba? He can bring them home, but no matter what tale he tells, he's a dead man. His wife is pregnant, no? Back home. So what does he do? Whatever tale he tells, someone will have to kill him, because that's a warrior culture. Do not kill my family and stay alive. So he has all these. What do I do? In the end, he decides to do the right thing, honorable thing in his mind as a Muslim, and bring them home. No, so it's really just about his last few hours on earth. While he sails back. Of course, when I wrote the script, I had to expand it. Naglagay ko ng mga ghost of sorts. Anyway, so that's a story that I hoped you had read. Because again, it's minimalist in the sense that there's actually just one character. Most of it. After he kills his pamangkin, siya na lang natira. No? And it's a story of epiphany. What is it that he finally... Again, it's the acceptance of, in a way, destiny. This is it. This is my few hours left to live. And yun, no? So in the end, well, what are stories? They are our search for meaning. It's a search for meaning. All art is a search for meaning. Storytelling, is it's a search for meaning. It's finding some meaning to our lives, to the welter of events, to the chaos we see around. Kaya kanina, ang daming sinusulat tungkol sa confidential fund, because that is what is topical. It's what's topical, so nandiyan yan. But that hindi lang topical minsan. In the end, the story works. It's more than just what is topical, but what is essential. What is essential to the human being? What is topical is today, is passing. Bukas wala nang confidential fund, iba naman pag-aawayan. Diba? That's the nature of politics, current events. The things that don't change are how do we love? How do we live? It's always the question. Times will change. I wrote a story called How My Cousin Manuel Brought Home a Wife. Right? It's my homage to Argilia, who wrote How My Brother Leon Brought Home a Wife. When Argilia wrote his story in 1930s, now before the Second World War, ang kwento ni Argilia is the brother of Leon brings home a wife from Manila. So Leon is I narrator is fascinated, no? Parang may crush siya doon sa kanyang hipag. So during those days, rural pa ang most ng Pilipinas. So you bring home a wife from Manila, it's like a big deal, di ba? It's like a big deal. And then, when I wrote my story, maybe in the 1980s, most people were urban, and then we were traveling, we're OFW na. So in my story, yung he's a Chinoy, no? Chinese Filipino, whose cousin left many years ago, went to Brazil, ganyan. He was coming home. Sabi niya sa nanay niya, and his mother is an immigrant from China, no? Na parang lola ko, no? So he was an immigrant. And then, so he said he's coming home with the wife. So the mother was very agitated, no? A foreign ang wife, ganyan, no? So at least, akala niya baka puti, di ba? Portuguese. So pag dating nung anak niya with the wife, it's a very big African Brazilian. So na-shock siya. Sino yan? Ano yan? So, so she started to, at some point, parang nag-hire siya ng exorcist para i-exorcise. But the woman, Consuelo, is actually a healer, no? A voodoo healer, no? Na minamanage nung anak niya. At marami siyang utang sa Brazil, kaya umuwi siya, came with the wife. Parang to market, no? Yung abilities of the wife. And then nung inatake sa puso yung mother, yung si Consuelo is the one who saves her. But we don't know exactly what happened. So anyway, yun yung contrast, no? Many decades later, write that story. So times change, but the questions are still there. How do we live and how do we love? What is essential? Story to being human. And so yun, no? Ano pa? So I guess that's it, no? So one of the lines that I always remember, again, another favorite story, called Sonny's Blues by James Baldwin, an African-American writer. At the end of the story, this goes the line. Although the tale of how we suffer and how we survive is never new, it always must be told. There is no other tale to tell. It is our only light in all this darkness. So that's it so far. If you have any questions.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sir Charlson. If you guys didn't receive the stories Sir Charlson prepared, on behalf of the Gemino Abad team, I would like to apologize. Just know that Sir Charlson prepared them. But, as we've seen earlier sa storytelling activity natin, I think fiction really thrives and prospers through multiple viewpoints. So if you guys have any questions for Sir Charlson about fiction, about teaching fiction, I now open the floor. Do you want me to bring the microphone over here? Or I'll bring it to you.
Hello po. I would just like to get an advice kasi sira po talaga ako in terms of yung parang plotting on how am I gonna develop my story. Parang what can be the best advice for me, especially if I want to write something lengthy.
So you're asking as a writer, not a teacher. Okay. So begin with something short. No, don't start with something lengthy. Write a short story. Let's say, no, you give yourself a word limit, 500 words. You start with short. Don't be wanting to write a novel first. But although, ironically, I'll tell you, early stories tend to be long. Why? Because you are verbose sa simula. You want to get these things out of your system. So just let them out. But eventually you have to learn how to cut, how to edit yourself. Huwag mo nang ulit-ulitin yung mga nasabi mo na. And again, I'm not the first to say this, but laging sasabihin sa'yo, no, art is not about expression. It's about imitation. Okay, so dwell on that.
Good afternoon po, Sir Charlson. So I'm going to ask a question for teaching creative writing naman in terms of fiction. I've been having trouble with my fiction writing students kasi they're so used to reading fan fiction, high fantasy, and I keep saying na short stories should be self-contained, and they have a big trouble understanding that. But we don't want to impede the type of imagination that they have, di ba? Siyempre, we appreciate the imagination and then the lengths that they go through when writing. And sometimes parang they feel resentful when I give a prompt. Na parang sinasabi ko na, no, this prompt is given para to help you highlight a specific fictive element. Parang, can you give me like tips to handle like situations like that? Thank
Give
you.
them this first line. It's not just your problem, it's everyone's problem. It's my problem too. When I was in school, when you talk of fiction, it's literary fiction. But now, there's all sorts. Your students will have read, they've read stuff I don't even know what they are. Di ba? Ano yan? Hindi ko alam yan. So, there's, you can't read everything, and they're really into a lot of fan fiction. Diba? So just tell them na ito muna. The fan fiction naman you can read on your own. So let's do this first. In fact, that's what, in a way, why I got into using this line. It's because it could go anywhere. So I can tell us, oh, you write what you write. Let's see where it goes. Could be any sort of story. Right? So, yeah, it's a very difficult one. I don't know how to deal with that too, because it's also a problem with me. I just tell them from the start, no, that this class is literary fiction. I write realistic fiction, so that's what I know. That's what my biases are. I don't want to see goblins or witches or no. I just draw the line for this class. Because you can do it in other classes, non-realistic, whatever, speculative. But it's well drawn. In this class, walang ganon. Kasi I don't even know how to teach that or how to say na okay ano hindi yan okay baka hindi ko rin alam, diba? It's not my thing, right? So I think you just teach what you think you can teach. Otherwise it will, well, you just have to timplahin mo eh. Right, but then it's still, as a teacher, I think you should still tell them, expose them to what was written before, because you never know. they've been exposed to these things because that's what what their peers read, what their generation read. So you have to tell them, show them. There are other sorts of stories. Maybe who knows? You might actually like it. So that's what teachers do. You're the villain. Always the villain.
Approach the mic. Go ahead.
Good afternoon po, sir. Vincent po from Naga. I would like to ask, sir, you mentioned earlier about flash fiction, and I think I'm seeing somewhat like a trend on this being taught in things in the curriculum, and students even favoring flash fiction um, over short stories that in my generation used to be the long ones. That is. Do you think there is a uh, do you think we get to sacrifice some skills um, that are when we allow them to just focus on flash fiction? Even in their writings, they would prefer um, just writing a shorter one. Do you think there are skills that we get to sacrifice if um, we have this inclination to also teach flash fiction instead of those that are, um, I don't know, conventional ones? Thank you po, sir.
Well, flash fiction, kaya nga, now the example I gave you was written in the 1930s or 1950s. An old story. No? So there's always been all sorts of fiction, long, short, one sentence. Sa akin, the shorter the piece is, the more difficult to write. No? It's not the length. No? I would say when I was younger, I wrote longer, and then I just wrote. And then as I got older, maybe I thought I had to cut, or go to the novel. So I think as a teacher, you just have to make them read all sorts. And then if you want to get them to write, there has to be exercises. No? Kailangan may mahabang exercise. Oh, you write 10,000 words. Diba? You write 10,000 words, 15,000 words, ikaw mag-set ng ano. I don't care, basta 10,000 words. And then, pwedeng shorter if you want them, one page. Diba? So I think there have to be all sorts. But you have to make them write long also. If you're saying that there are skills to develop and ganyan, di sabihin mo, an assignment ay 10,000 words. Oh, I used to do that. Basta. Of course, you will realize na pinapahaba lang talaga. But okay lang. Okay lang. It's part of the learning. And then, you make them, it's up to you. You require them. You require them. You have to insist. The exercise involves 10,000 words yan. Okay. And then later, maybe shorter. Yeah.
Good afternoon. My question po, etong siguro past 3 years, I noticed yung mga students ko, ang sinasubmit nila sa akin work ay very formal ang structure and also grammatically perfect. So, hindi ko alam kung is this AI or type talaga nila yon. Pero yung napapansin ko, ano ba siya? Nauso yung mga palabas kasi na makaluma ang salita. So, no matter how many exercises I make na, sige, itong araw na to, ang susulat nyo isang bakla. Sa susunod na araw, lang tayo sa isang halo. Pagdating ng final output, it's still formal na magbabayad ka sa ginawa mong kasamaan sa pamilya ko.
Do they write this in class or they send it in? Kasi
Partly in class.
if they write in class, talagang sila ang sumusulat nun, di ba? And maybe that yun ang kanilang concept ng kung ano yung format.
Feeling ko po, parang na-indoctrinate sila na from grade 1 to grade 10, you have to write properly. Ito yung tamang structure ng sentence. Ito yung formal composition. So pagdating sa akin, sa creative writing, they don't lack imagination. Ano sa imagination nila? They just don't know how to express it creatively. Parang formal yung kanilang pag-express. You want to explain everything.
I suggest before you, if it's a creative writing, before you make them write, make them read. Diba? You make them read. Basa muna. Make them read what you think they should read. Diba? Read. And then, pag-usapan ninyo. Diba? Para ma-inspire sila. Kasi kung wala silang nababasa, ay, hindi mo ganun talaga sumulat. Kailangan formal kasi klase. So you make them read. You make them read crazy stories or let's say, comic stories. Diba? Para alam nila, pwede pala magpatawa. Kasi for instance, yung na-mention kong piyesa ko na How My Cousin, it's supposed to be a comic story. So make them read the story. Diba? Pag-usapan niyo. Bago sumulat because they don't know. Diba? Like I said, no, our art is really imitation. Diba? At first, gusto mong gayahin kasi gusto mo. But of course, you have to surpass it. Iba yung plagiarism, no? Hindi mo pwedeng kopya. But you can be inspired by, so you can imitate. So give them models. Model yan, di ba? So give them models na ito, basahin mo. Usapan natin. Anong tingin nyo? So, kaya naman. Kasi kung walang silang background, walang basis, kung ano lang yung alam nila, kung ano lang naturo sa kanila beforehand. So, make them read first. At hindi lang sa textbook kung ano yung tingin mo maganda para sa'yo. Kasi kung maganda para sa'yo, pwede mong I think teaching is really infecting more than just telling them this or that. If you love it, if you love what you're teaching, you infect them, di ba? Mahahawa sila sa'yo. So, kailangan mahahawa sila dun sa. Mostly, hindi. Pero, may ilang-ilan na siguro.
Good afternoon po. So my main question po is, how do you deal with students po who would get frustrated regarding your comments about their outputs? Like how would you, like I've had students who would approach me, not entirely to question siguro my feedback, but to air their frustrations that, ma'am, parang I did well naman on this output, but why aren't you parang praising it that much? So siguro po, how do you reconcile your view of what good writing is with the actual outputs that your students produce?
Well, no one likes being no one likes being critiqued, young or old. Even at our age, you still feel bad if someone says, "I don't like your work," blah blah blah. Anyway, you just I think there's a way of critiquing it without being nasty. As long as you don't say anything nasty, and baka naman pwedeng ganito, di ba? No, it's an art form. I think teaching is an art, especially teaching in class. Diba? If you're a critic, sa dyaryo, sa Facebook, wala kang pakialam. No? You can say what you want. But if you're handling classes, then it's an art form, really. It's an art form. How do you say it na hindi sila sasama ang loob? Lahat yan sasama ang loob. Lahat naman tayo ganon. So you just have to sense that, and then ano ba? It's an art form. It's something you learn as you go along. That's something I think you can teach. The ability to cushion what you're saying, or it's something you learn. It's like a coach. It's like Chot Reyes. It's like a coach. You're coaching. Mumurahin mo ba yung player, di ba? Or kung magalit sa'yo, umalis na lang. What do you say? Or directing a move. So it's always, I think it's something you learn. And I have never taught very young kids, no? Usually, the youngest are 17, 18, ganyan. So, I think you just have to learn. Basta hindi naman magulang na nagre-reklamo siguro. Yeah. You just have to learn how to. But I don't know if it's, maybe now, mga bata seem to be more sensitive. Ayaw nilang, that's part of the problem, I think. Your generation, I don't care anymore. Yeah, I think your generation, everyone's a critic. Everyone's because they have all their gadgets. They're all spoiled. Too many way, mahirap pagsabihan. Mahirap pagsabihan. So, yun. I think that's just the problem, you know. In our time, you stand in the corner, ganyan. Stand in the corner. Ngayon, bawal na. What do you do? Ngayon, may ADHD na lahat. Yung pamangkin ko yung apo ko sa pamangkin, may ADHD na, 10 years old. Eh noon, diyan ka lang sa, sabi nga, anong ADHD? So it's the times. No? It's the times.
Hello. Just a question, two questions. One, I noticed among my students that some of them tend to write using unreliable narrators. How can we either dissuade our students from using unreliable narrators, or make do with these kinds of narrators? Two, any tips on writing exercises for managing tone or longer?
The unreliable narrator is a form. It's something you can use. No, there's nothing wrong with it. As long as the student understands that he or she is using an unreliable narrator. No, na fiction ito, diba? Fiction ito at unreliable yung narrator. So he or she, the character could be lying. The character could be mentally challenged, could be anyone. So, classic case, Faulkner's Sound and Fury, di ba? May chapter doon na mentally challenged yung so it's not wala din lang masama doon, basta na-understand nila kung bakit nila ginagamit yung unreliable na dito. Kailangan ba? Yung sa tone, I think, again, first make them read, no? So, some of the samples I gave you, may dalawang I narrator doon, both stories are I, pero magkaiba ng tono. Diba? Magkaiba ng tono. And then, yun. How is it achieved? Exercises, I think, pwede mong say, write a piece na I narrator from an exercise, let's say, na bias, let's say, si Donald Trump biglang nasa Manila. May nakita siyang ganito ganyan. Say, you write from the point of view of Donald Trump. How will it sound? You can give them these, because they depende how young they are. Or let's say, baka mas familiar si Duterte. Diba? Nag-English naman si Duterte. So, let's say, kung si former President Duterte ay ganito. Paano niya, So, you can, let them practice on things that are familiar. They practice lang naman yan. How do you achieve the tone? Yun. Galit. Pwedeng the same situation, and then you tell it na you're angry or sad. Yeah. The same situation. Tell it like you're angry or you're sad. So, practice. And that's tone, that's subtext. You're saying this, but you actually mean this. Right? So tone is actually one of the hardest things to learn. Right? It's like when you play music, same thing. Okay. But really, it's reading. If you're teaching or writing, it's really reading. Make them read. It's the hardest thing, I guess, to do because they don't like to read. Pero they read everything online. So it's just making them read. Now, because everything is visual, nakakatamaran. Yun. And then, ano pa? Well, I see a lot of things online. I think one of the exercises, kasi minsan eyebrows, and I see students making short video of one of my story or someone else's story, or a chapter from the novel. So I see, parang some of the teachers do that. Na may project sila, and then they make a they make something out of the wanting to go. So I think we just have to use the visual aids these days can be helped.
Good afternoon again, sir. Sir, may I just ask, sir, this is in relation to what was asked earlier, sir. if you are to um, critique or judge a good story, what are you looking for to say that this is a good story? Perhaps your three things siguro that you're looking for. I would ask because I would paraphrase what my students said, what my students said before. Malay mo, sir, maging national artist ako one day. Ano bang hinahanap mo? Okay. So, you, sir, if you were to ano, what will you be looking for?
Itanong
to say
natin
that
sa
you're-
national artist. Bakit ako? National artist ang tanongin niyo dyan. It's hard to pin down. And it's, may sample, yeah, it's a story. Why do I like this? What do I look for? First of all, it has to make sense. Well, whatever language. If it's English, then the English has to be clear. Correct. Diba? Unless it's intentionally wrong. Iba yun. So the language has to work. It has to be clear. I prefer something that is terse, to the point. No? Walang paligoy-ligoy. Long or short. It's clear, it's concise, and it's like I know when I see it. When you read it, or even a movie, you can argue about it, but when you see it, I like it. Good. I don't think, parang it's something you develop. But what I like, maybe, what I like when I was 18 is different, or a bit different, I think. What I like when I was 28, 38, 48, ganyan. Your taste will change as well. Not just that of your students. Diba? It will, there are stuff I read or there are movies I saw when I was younger. I didn't think any much of them. I had to see them again when I'm older, and then I understand. You have to live I think you have to live enough to be able to appreciate certain things, including art. When you're young, you're young. When you're older, then yeah. Maybe yun ang epiphany.
Good afternoon po, sir. Brandy Pareñas po from Imus National High School. I am teaching grade 9 public school po ito in Cavite. Before my question po, may kwento lang po ako, no? Very short lang naman po ito. Well, in the public sector po, every time that we do our inset, meron po kaming tinatawag na demonstration teaching for teachers po, no? And one of the teachers, nagturo po siya ng Chanticleer and the Fox, which is actually a fable. Chanticleer and the Fox by Geoffrey Chaucer. Parang ganun po yung ano niya. And the discussion was revolved around very didactic na kinuha niya yung moral and the lessons that students can actually learn from the story. Yung ginawa ko naman po, sir, I actually taught the Steel Brashear. The Steel Brashear, which is a feminist text. Tapos nag-theorize po ako dun sa demonstration ko. Hinaluan ko siya ng gender, ng feminism, at saka ng mga power struggle. Like for example, the Marxist theory. Afterwards, ang review po sa akin ng mga master teacher po namin, yung mga observers po namin. Sabi nila, hindi daw akma yung ganong analysis, yung theorization sa mga grade 9 students, primarily because they are too young for the analysis of literature with a theory. So parang iniisip ko, my question now, sir, as a fictionist and as a teacher of literature, necessary po ba na we theorize, develop a particular, we use a particular theory in the analysis of literature? And if it is necessary, kailan po dapat natin siyang i-insert? At ano pong opinion nyo dun sa mga pagtuturo na ang tanging layunin lang ay may matutunang lesson ang mga bata and not to like intertext that particular text to the world itself. Thank you, sir.
Siguro yung age, akma, no? We're always teaching, we're always naman promoting our case, no? But then it's the idea of, when you say theorize, I would suggest certain age, don't use jargon, diba? Like say, you're the feminist. Anong ibig mong sabihin? Diba? Huwag kang gumamit ng jargon. Kasi baka yung mga nakikinig na teacher, hindi ka rin maintindihan. Diba? Kung Marxist analysis, in other words, intindihin mo yung gusto mong sabihin at ipaliwanag mo ng klaro. Pag kang gumamit ng anumang theoretical na term, pwede mong ilagay konti, no? Pero pwede mong linawin. You can teach anything. Kaya nga may mga parables na pinag-usapan natin noon. Noong unang panahon, mga tao hindi naman literate, so gumagamit ng parable. Di ba? Yung parable may sinasabi. It's the same thing. Gusto mong turuan ng feminism, for instance, you don't have to use jargon. You want to intertext, edi i-relate mo ito sa vice ganda, for instance, di ba? Intertext yun. O sa mga popular na alam nila. So I think it's avoiding jargon. That's it, no? So if you know what you're teaching, you can make it sound clear to everyone. Maybe those who were judging did not know what you were saying, or maybe they did not agree. That's another thing. If they disagree, they don't want you to teach these things. But ibang bagay yun. So, anyway, sabi daw ay tapos na. So, yun lang, no? I think sa teaching, wag gumamit ng jargon, no? Unless it's necessary or unless the students want it. Diba? So, there's so first of all, understand what you're teaching, and then explain it in the. Diba, there's always this thing, like, mathematics for idiots. Diba, computer for idiots. So what's feminism for idiots? Diba, maybe yung mga nagja-judge sa'yo, idiots. So what's feminism for idiots? What's class analysis for idiots? So yun ang mo. You're talking to idiots. That's the safest thing to. Salamat.
To our speaker for fiction, can we give Sir Charlson Ong another round of applause? On behalf of the Likhaan UP Institute of Creative Writing, we would like to award Sir Charlson Ong the Certificate of Appreciation. Thank you so much, sir. Tapos, mag-picture taking rin tayo. Same as last time. Yeah. Same as Thank you once again, sir. Would our teacher participants appreciate a 10-minute recess for like bathroom and refreshments? Oh, go lang. Be back here at 2:56. Is she ano? Is she na? Type. on creative nonfiction. In fact, I may be doing her a disservice. She wrote the books, plural, on creative nonfiction. She was the editor of Creative Nonfiction, a reader, and Creative Nonfiction, a manual for Filipino writers. Fresh off her recently awarded See You Right Award, let's all welcome Ma'am Cristina Pantoja Hidalgo.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry about all the past, but you know, at my age, and I won't tell you how old that is, I if I don't have something to read, I tend to ramble. So I need to have something to look at. I hope you don't mind. Um, Can we have the first slide? So the way I structured my lecture is that there are a series of questions that I will ask and answer. So let's begin. First, okay, so the first question is creative nonfiction a new genre? Actually, it evolved from new journalism or literary journalism, a term that was coined in the 60s to describe the works of works such as In Cold Blood by Truman Capote, written in 1966, Norman Mailer's The Armies of the Night, written in 1968, and Tom Wolfe's The Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test in 1968. These American writers were known as the new journalists. Some forms of prose nonfiction, however, like the essay, have been around much longer. So they have been in existence in Europe since the 16th century, when Michel de Montaigne published the book titled Essays, spelled Essais. In Japan, it was born even earlier. I'm thinking here of the famous diaries of the court ladies of 11th century Japan, like the Pillow Book of Seishonagon. But what we know as creative nonfiction was first instituted as an academic course in the University of Pittsburgh in 1973 by Lee Gutkind, which is why he is sometimes referred to as the godfather of creative nonfiction. The next question is, what is creative nonfiction? One definition, there have been a lot of definitions, I'll just give you a couple. One definition is that creative nonfiction is all literary prose. That is not fiction. It is writing imaginatively about things that actually happened to people who actually existed. It is writing in a personal way about one's experiences, emotions, and ideas. That's the definition of Theodore Rees Cheney in the book Writing Creative Nonfiction. In my own book, which some of you have copies of since you asked me to sign them, I wrote, the key word is personal. The writer of creative nonfiction presents the world or that slice of it that he or she wishes to focus on through the prism of his own personality. Thus, he makes contact with the reader in a different way from that of the traditional journalist. The reader becomes involved, as he or she does in fiction. Okay, next question. What are the different types of creative nonfiction? You know, my colleagues in the Department of Filipino here in UP have resisted trying to find a equivalent for creative nonfiction, they have preferred to stick to the word sanaysay, which means essay, no? And I think that's fine because really the essay is one form of creative nonfiction, but there are many others. So the term is a kind of umbrella term that covers a broad spectrum of literary works. And on one end of that spectrum is, as I said, new journalism or literary journalism. And on the other end is probably the lyric meditation. And in between, there are a lot of works. For example, the feature article, the book or film review, the newspaper column, personal essay, memoir, autobiography, diary or journal, character sketch, profile, biography, and maybe some others. It is really a tremendously flexible form, and that is what makes it so exciting. There is no time here to take up each kind, so, I mean, you can Google them and get a definition for all those terms I mentioned, but for now, I wish simply to call your attention to the fact that there are two basic types of creative nonfiction. There is the narrative form, and then there is the expository form. Narratives, as you know, tell stories. Whereas, so examples of the narrative type of creative nonfiction would be the memoir and the autobiography. And example of the expository type would be the essay. So then, as I said, the narrative form tells a story. The expository form presents, explains, or clarifies facts or concepts or objects. Next question. How does one teach creative nonfiction, which is really what this seminar is about, right? And I have chosen to do so by taking an example, a good example of creative nonfiction, the essay by Butch Dalisay. You have copies of it, I think. Do you? Okay, so you can follow me as I go along. I will go paragraph by paragraph. This is how I would teach this essay. So beginning with paragraph 1, notice how the piece begins. It opens with a scene. The narrator's father has just died on the operating table, while the narrator and his mother and other members of the family wait outside. So in that first paragraph, the narrator is introduced and the setting is established. I think you will recognize that this is the way many short stories begin. So I'm pointing to the similarity here between creative nonfiction and fiction and how they operate. No? You will please notice also in that first paragraph the use of concrete and evocative details. In other words, it's not just description with straight statements. You have the use of concrete and evocative details. The man died of, quote, ruptured abdominal aneurysm. The narrator is not described as the son, but as the firstborn. Then the family is described as, quote, waiting and praying outside, slumped limply against walls, cheeks bright with tears. So it's very clear. No? It's a clear image, clear evocative image. And note the self-reflexive reference in the last sentence. He says, he refers to hospital cliches that we had seen many times before in TV dramas that enervated and yet also entertained the viewer. What is, well, you know what self-reflexive means, right? It means self-aware. So the attitude has, the writer and the narrator, along with the writer, has this self-aware attitude throughout the piece. Moving now to paragraph 2. In this second paragraph, there is a flashback, and here again, you are in the realm of fiction. No? Fictionists always use flashbacks. So in paragraph 2, there is a flashback to the scene that took place in the hospital ER. And the narrator says, that Friday afternoon, such and such and such, this is what happened. No? So you must be familiar with the device from your readings of fiction. Then the narrator introduces himself formally as the main character in this little drama. He calls himself the writer and the scenarist. So the writer and the playwright. This is what he is, that narrator. And then he says, I was acutely aware of theater and irony in the ER. Now, this is the questions that I ask you are what I suggest you ask your students. So after you point out these things to them, the fact that in the first paragraph is a scene, and the second paragraph, the narrator introduces himself, and then he says that about, I was acutely aware of the theater and irony in the ER. My question to you is, in what sense do the events that happened make him think of theater? And what is it about the events which are ironic? So this is something you can ask your students and they will answer. The narrator continues, it is perhaps the peculiar gift and yet also the misfortune of the writer and the scenarist to know, even in the grip of an emotional storm, just exactly what is going on and what will likely happen next, down to the awkward ellipses and the unscheduled turns and pauses. So that's the answer to the question. The question as to what is so ironic about it and why is it connected with theater. As a writer here, let me proceed. The narrator is telling us that the scene he is living through could have been part of a script that he had written before. In fact, he has written scenes like that. And he says, I quote, Tatay's death was a scene I had rehearsed in my own fiction and my more casual prose. And he admits that these may have been, quote, preemptive efforts at anticipating and thereby reducing the real pain of actual loss. I thought perhaps that if I wrote often enough about death, it would go away, or at least appear much more familiar when it came. Are you following what he's doing? Okay, so he is telling us that as a writer and a scene writer, a dramatist, he has often written about this, maybe as a way of preempting what he will feel when it actually happens. No? So, and it is in that sense ironic that in the middle of suffering, he is remembering that he has written this scene before. Have you ever experienced that? Where you're in the middle of something, maybe even a love scene, di ba? Yung in the middle of the love scene, you're like, hey, I imagined what this would be like. But you know, when I used to do that and imagine, I was usually disappointed because because in reality, the person in the scene, in the romantic scene, sometimes was ungrammatical. Pag ungrammatical siya, sira na yung scene for me, no? And then sometimes he said the wrong things. So the imagined was better than the reality. Now, in going back to Dalitay, however, in his case, the actual is strikingly like the scenes that he had written about earlier. In paragraph 3, sabi pala niya, I skipped. The narrator then seems to digress. He mentions that there's an airline ticket in his pocket and that he is scheduled to leave on Saturday for Dumaguete to pay his last respects to Dr. Ed Tiempo of Diliman University, whom he has referred to elsewhere as his literary father. So 2 fathers have died, his own and his literary father. And then he mentions that as his father's body was being wheeled to the hospital morgue, quote, another book of mine was being launched in the book fair. So as his father is dying, his child, the book, is being born. And then he ends the paragraph with, I would have criticized the narrative at any point for heavy-handedness. Ano yung heavy-handedness? What does that word mean? It means sobra. Sobra ka naman. 3 things happening at the same time. In fiction, you wouldn't do it that way. It is bad fiction. Parang yung kinukwento ko dun sa love story. Hindi pwede ang grammatical yung hero, di ba? Masisira yung story. Dito naman, sabi niya, yung reality, parang not as good as it could have been in fiction. Too many things happening at the same time. So this is what is meant by self-reflexive. Let me continue. Paragraph 3. In paragraph 3, there is another flashback to the narrator's own experience in the same hospital the previous weekend. Sabi niya, it was for a minor complaint and a thorough checkup. And this dream that he had of himself cradling his father's head and crying his heart out. So he had a dream. And then he says, but, in retrospect, he thinks it might have been a premonition, but he does not believe in such things, the narrator tells us. The writer in him rejects it. What can one do with a premonition, I ask myself, in a story? He means in a story. Is it part of the plot, part of the pattern, an obligatory detail? So as a writer, he would not put the dream as premonition. Paragraph 4 now. By the way, when you teach it this way, you can then ask them what they have to say. I have to go fast, so I will not ask too many questions. Paragraph 4, the narrator now recalls the scene between himself and the surgeon. If any of you has had an experience of having a close relative die, you know that sometimes the doctor will ask you, do you want me to continue with the surgery if it is almost certain that he will die? I had that kind of experience myself with my husband, who had aneurysm also, not of the abdomen, but of the aorta. And the doctor said to me, do you want me to proceed? You know, I told you that as a surgeon, I should. It is my duty to try to save his life. But I can tell you that the chances are very small. And then you decide. In the case of the story we are hearing about here, the Lisay decided to tell the doctor to go ahead and cut. And then his father died. But he says in the piece, I still do not regret. It was the right decision. Okay, now paragraphs 5 to 11 now focus on the character of Jose Dalisay Sr. So consider the following passages. So this is how Jose Dalisay, the writer, chose to describe his father. Now, since this is CNF, we know that the writer and the narrator are the same. So here's the one passage. Jose Sr. was a poor man all his life. A word I often heard around the house when I was growing up is the word diligencia. You're familiar with the word. What does it mean? It doesn't only mean earning. Kasi if I'm going to work in teaching in UP, hindi naman yung diligencia. We have a term for it, by the way, my friends and I, yung diligencia, labada. And tumanggap na naman ako ng labada. Ibig sabihin, nagsa-sideline, di ba? Nag-edit, mga ganun. Pero yung diligencia has an added element of what? Small time. Yung kahit papano, that's another favorite word of us Filipinos. We use it often. No, when you say, nakahanap naman ako ng diligencia kahit papano. Meaning, actually, I heard it used in another way, rather comic. Sabi nung isang friend ko about another friend. To be fair, ano ba sabi niya? In fairness, yon. Another favorite Filipino phrase, in fairness, meron naman siyang eye makeup kahit papano. Ano ibig sabihin? Ako, I was thinking, no? Ano ba ibig sabihin? Pangit naman ang pagkalagay ng makeup, pero at least meron. Yung ba yun? Yung ba yun? O ano yung kahit papano in that context, no? Pero in the context of the Lisay, ano yung diligencia dito? Sinabi niya, my father was a poor man all his life. And he kept hearing the word dilihensya in the house when he was growing up. Ibig sabihin, ano? He was industrious, pero yung dilihensya, parang kahit ano nang lang klaseng trabaho, tinatanggap niya, di ba? As this continues to say, let me go on reading. Wala na pala yun, hindi ko pala sinama yun. Yung kahit anong klaseng trabaho, kahit na yung, ano ba yung mga, yung barker ba sa jeep? Yung tumatawag ng pasa, oh, San Juan, ganon. Tinatanggap yung father niya, kahit yung ganong klaseng trabaho, kasi nga, kulang yung kanyang kita. So, yun ang dilihensya. Okay, another passage. He was, and if you see, parang contrast ito dun sa, nakalagay dun sa first paragraph, the province's brightest boy, by popular acclaim, a self-taught wordsmith who learned his English from voracious reading, a farmer's son who won the hand of a landowner's Manila-educated daughter in marriage after 1 week of courtship. O, diba? 1 week courtship na, sumagot na yung kanyang, minamahal. And he was a farmer's son, but she was the daughter of she was a Manila-educated daughter of a landowner. Passage number 3. He never finished college, so the local legend goes, because he never needed to. A consistent valedictorian, he took exams for dollar relatives and passed them. He picked up his vocabulary from the Reader's Digest, and whatever books found their way to Alcantara Romblon. Now tell me, what is that passage supposed to show about the Lycæan? What kind of man was he? Based on that passage. Hindi ninyo sasagutin, hindi ko ibibigay yung sagot sa inyo. Tanungin na lang ninyo sa mga estudyante ninyo. Each passage is highlighting equality. But he's not saying it directly. Yun ang point ko, no? This is what makes the writing so good. He doesn't say, just my father was poor and did not go to college, period. Hindi eh. There are details that are supposed to give you more than that, an idea of what kind of man he was. Next passage. He was immensely proud of his words and generous with them to his last days, drafting basic legal papers and various letters. By the way, is it appearing there? I can't keep turning it. And various letters seeking help for the small folk, working at a converted restaurant table in his carless garage in San Mateo. So he used to write things for his neighbors, who were not good enough to be able to write letters of that sort. And he also took an exam for his relatives who were maybe bobo, di ba? And could not pass the exam. So siya, even if he never finished his education, he would take the exam. And then the last passage I'm going to quote, his letters to my mother, written in the 1950s and 1960s, from places all over the country where he had drifted to, doing odd jobs for various patrons and kind hearts, were full of love and pain and guilt at having to be away from us and yet not being able to send more money home. The letters are those of an OCW in his own country. So yun, alam na natin kung ano yung dilihensya. Okay, now, and then, so those are the passages. And now, consider these sundry details. Despite the family's poverty, Jose Sr. and his wife decided to send the narrator and the narrator only, none of their other children, to De La Salle, Green Hills. And his brothers and sisters, for a while, were farmed out to to various relatives because the parents couldn't provide for them properly at home. And home was an ever mobile place, a succession of small apartments all over the city, from Pasay to Pasig to UP Village, more than a dozen of them in a span of 30 years. Now, here's the question to be asked of your students. What do these details reveal? And what is the tone used by the narrator to present them? What does the tone in literature refer to? I will talk about later. Let me ask you now. These details, let's take that one about sending him to Lasal. What does that show? They were poor. The father had to make diligencia all over the country, but they decided to send their oldest son to school in the Lasal. In the piece, if you read it, you know that he also says that during that one time that he was there, the sons of 3 presidents were enrolled in the same school at the same time. So it's the very best, no? So what does that show about the father? What is the characteristic shown here? Bakit yung isa lang ang pinag-aral? Yes, he values good education. It was an investment, no? We'll invest in him. Yung iba, hindi na lang. Bakit kaya? Aside from the fact, if in fact, put yourself in his place. You have 4 children ba? Or 5? I don't remember how many. You can obviously not send all of them. Maybe you cannot, so you will choose one na lang. The tuition of LaSalle is enough to educate one son. You will choose on the basis of what? Hindi ba yung panganay? Hindi ba kaya yung dahil sa lalaki siya? Panganay at lalaki. But there is also the fact, I suppose, that he was truly promising. No, this was the son, parang si, di ba, si Jose Rizal, another Jose, na si Pasiano sacrificed himself for him. Actually, Pasiano was also intelligent. Di ba? Pero yung kapatid niya, brilliant. Di ba? The difference between intelligent, yung magaling naman, and truly brilliant is obvious even when they are small, di ba? Alam mo na yun. So, the father made the decision, we will invest in him. And the Lisay, the narrator, says that I knew what my duty was, and it was to make the investment worthwhile. So all his life, he carried that. They invested in me, and I had to give it back in some way. Now, so I was also asking about the tone, no? So what do you understand by tone? Ano ba yun? Actually, tone is a metaphor from the human voice, di ba? When you use the word tone, you refer first of all to the voice and yung tono, no? Pwedeng mataas, mababa, yung ganon. You also refer to the, sagutin ko na lang, yung attitude. kasi may limit eh. Yung the attitude that the speaker has toward his subject matter. So tanong ko ngayon kayo, ano ba yung attitude ni Dalisay Jr. kay Dalisay Sr.? What do you think is his attitude towards his subject, which in this case is his father? What does he feel toward his father? From the way it is written, it is admiration and I think deep love, no, and gratitude. He realizes how difficult things were for his father, who never had the opportunity to attain what he will be able to attain. Going to, I don't know if you know the history of Dalisay Jr. Aside when he graduated from Green Hills, wala na ito dito, ano ito, chismis, in other words. I know it from what he has told me. He's a good friend of mine. His parents told him there's no more money. Hindi pala na up to high school yun, elementary lang. No mag-high school na, he was told there's no more money. So if you want to go and study, you have to pass the exam of the Philippine High School, PSI, Philippine Science High School, which Dalisay did, by the way. And from there, UP. That was, eventually he went to UP. So, the investment paid off. Okay, now let's go to another matter, and that is style. Actually, I've been pointing to it already while I was reading, but now let us take it up specifically. No? Style simply means the stamp of the creator's personality upon his work or her work. In literature, style is the literary element that describes the ways in which the author uses words, sentence structure, figurative language, images, symbols, scenes, summary, and description to establish mood and create meaning in the text. Style in literature is the author's word choice, sentence structure, and everything else, all working together to establish mood and images and meaning in the text. Okay, somewhere near, so let's talk about, I'll give you an example now of how the style of the Lisay works, aside from everything else I've been saying. Somewhere near the end of this piece, the narrator describes his father's house in San Mateo as, quote, finally and fully amortized monthly over 15 years, like a long-running prayer. Ano yun? That's a simile. That is a figure of speech, metaphor, or simile. Why is he comparing the alam niyo yung amortization, di ba? Yung pagbayad ng give, di ba? For 15 years, like a long-running prayer. What is this appropriateness of such an image? Yes, but I mean, why use that particular image of the prayer? Comparing it, yeah. Okay. You know that is a new idea. I mean, I had never thought of that. Maybe because I know Lisa is not particularly religious. The writer. wag ninyo ako isumbong sa kanya ha, kung magpunta siya dito. Yeah, but I appreciate that, and I will tell Butch that this is what you read in his essay, no? Actually, I think the contrast is supposed to bring out yung, di ba pag long-running prayer, parang matagal mo nang dinadasal ito, pero hindi pa siya natutupad, di ba? So, parang matagal bago i-grant. And then, parang ganyan yung amortization. Di ba yung when you want something very badly, some people make novena. Magdadasal ka every so many days, for months, or whatever, no? Tapos yung mga panata, yung mga ganon, di ba? Yung nagbibihis ng, yung mga nagpapanata, halimbawa sa Quiapo, na kailangan they will carry the statue of the Nazareno, di ba? Yung mga ganon. So it's associated with sacrifice. And the amortization of the house and the 15 years that it took to pay it is compared to the long-running prayers which we do. But naku, Charles, ipaalala mo sa akin, sabihin ko kay Butch. Kala nila religious siya dahil doon. Okay, okay. Now, note na another quality about his style, no? Notice how many times the word words appear in the piece. No? For example, Jose Sr. is described as being a wordsmith. Di ba? He has, di ba, blacksmith, parang you work with words, so wordsmith. And then we are told that he was immensely proud of his words. And the last sentence of the piece mentions yung he's thanking his father. Sabi niya, for the, basahin ko yun. Okay, let me read the last paragraph. No, this is, you remember how the piece ends? It's a letter that his father wrote to him. His father wrote him a letter in 1963 when he was only, the narrator was only 9 years old. Sabi niya, sabi nung letter, I have just written Mommy a rather long letter. And I explained to her as best as I could my situation here. I'm not earning yet, Toto, so I hope you will not bother him by making unreasonable demands. You are now the right-hand man. He was 9 years old, huh? You are now the right-hand man of Mommy there, and it is your duty to see to it that she is spared from unnecessary worries. Try to help with the chores in the house, watch your kid brother and sisters, teach Jesse his lessons, and help him with his homework. With no money and plenty of work to do, your mother is apt to be irritable. But you must understand the heavy load that she is carrying. You are the main hope of the family, and I am determined even to die here to give you the education that Mommy and I want you to have. I feel very lonely for all of you there, but I have to earn some money so we can all live. Here is 5 pesos for you. 5 pesos. For you and your brothers and sisters. For you, 2 pesos. For Jesse, 1 peso. For Rawi, 1 peso. And for Elaine, 1 peso. Let Mommy keep it for you and just draw from her whenever you must buy something. I wish I could send you more. That's the end of the letter. And then the narrator says, but you did, Tatay, and thank you. They are the words that you gifted us with that keep us whole and awake and well. Yun, di ba? Ang ganda. So the question that you should ask your students is, why did he decide to to end the piece with the letter of his father? Why did he make the readers hear his father's voice? And why does it end this way? That's for style. And then we come to the last point, which is the meaning. This brings me to the last element of all good writing, insight or meaning. Kwento without insight is just kwentuhan. It is chismis. You don't write creative nonfiction, those of you who are writers. You don't write creative nonfiction or any other piece of literature just to share. No, ayoko yung word na share. It is overused. Since Facebook, di ba, share. Ganun lang. Hindi naman yan share. You just press a button. So you don't write just to share what you experience. Who cares what you experience, no? No. No. In fact, going back to Facebook, yung mga sinishare naman nila, walang kakwenta-kwenta yung ibang bagay. Di ba kung I ate a ham sandwich, so you ate a ham sandwich, I bought this new dress, I bought a new car. And you readers do not read you just to learn what happened to you. They read because they want to know what you made of that experience, what it meant to you. They read it for your insight. And if you did your job well, they are grateful to you for it. Yun. The end. That's it. What happens now? Question.
Once again, Ma'am Jing, we'll be opening the floor for any questions that our participants may have for Ma'am Jing.
Wala. Pwede na ako umuwi. May questions ba?
Hello po, ma'am. This is not actually a question, pero I just want to express how thankful I am. Based on the feedback ng mga bata, CNF is very tasky, pero once it gets personal, yung para pong nalalabas po nila yung mga stories po nila, sabi po nila CNF is very therapeutic po. So thank you po doon.
Sorry, hindi ko nakuha. Ano yun?
Kasi po
Ano yung very tacky?
very tasky po yung tedious po, bale. Yung writing CNF. Pero at the end of the day, parang naging reflective daw po, naging therapy nila kasi they are able to process po yung mga nangyayari sa kanila. So thank you.
They find it difficult to write CNF.
Apo, pero pag nandun na po sila sa process na they're actually opening themselves, lalo na po yung, there was one instance po kasi na pinagawa ko po sila ng pathography. It's like a medical narrative. A lot of students, nagkwento po sila noong experience ng mga magulang nila na nagkaroon ng sakit and eventually some of them died due to COVID. So parang they were able to process po through writing. So thank you po.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm glad. Yeah. You know, do you know that for the longest time, CNF was looked down on? I have an anecdote involving Dr. Abad. Can I tell you? I was teaching CNF, no, in my office. Well, anyway, the Creative Writing Institute here, and then a student came knocking on the door in the middle of my class, and then sabi, "Is this the class in creative nonfiction?" Yes, I said. Do you belong to this class? I said, "Are you enrolled?" No, ma'am. Sabi niya, "I was sent here by Dr. Jimmy Abad." And I'm like, "Really? Why?" Sabi ho niya, "Ma'am, you're no poet. You're not a poet," sabi daw sa kanya ni Jimmy. "So you go to that creative nonfiction. Baka you can write Anyway, he already apologized for that before. But my point was that for a long time, the essay, in fact, not just creative nonfiction, but the essay before it, hindi ang kasama sa Palangka Awards, remember? There was no prize for the essay. Tapos yung mga workshop, the workshop set up first by Diliman and then by UP, hindi kasama yan. It's only later, in the 90s, when they began including creative nonfiction. So for a while, it was really looked down on. And this man, Gutkind, whom I quoted, yung godfather daw of creative nonfiction in the University of Pittsburgh, when he first suggested introducing that as a discipline, as a subject, he was laughed out of the room. Sabi nung mga colleagues niya, "What? Non-creative fiction." Yun pa, di ba? Non-creative, yun. The only reason it was approved was because the student journalists asked for it. They said they wanted that course, and the faculty did not want to fight the student press. So natuloy yun. And then now, it is actually one of the most popular courses in. So yung sinasabi ni your gentleman there, yeah, I think that a lot of young people find that they can do this kind of writing and that it helps them in some way. Anything else? Yes, please. Yung mic. Afternoon.
Hello. Hi, ma'am. I'm Gerald from Naga City.
Naga.
Yes. I just have a question since you've been teaching creative nonfiction for a long time, and I know that you also encounter some students who probably struggle at one point in doing CNF. So may I know, how do you structure your lessons in terms of ensuring that the newbies or neophytes in writing creative nonfiction will be able to transition from doing essays into doing more like biopics or memoirs of other people? Like, do you have a structure in doing that one so that at least we can provide multiple creative nonfiction genres to our students, and at their age, even at the level of senior high school, they will still be able to probably do mga self-help books?
Actually, I'm not too ambitious. Especially that, actually, I have to admit, I don't teach in high school. I teach in college and graduate school, no? So it's different. What I mean is I lower my expectations to a certain extent, and I don't try to crowd too many things into, like the things I gave you, all the types of creative nonfiction, hindi ko naman yan tinuturo. I usually make them choose. Would you like to write a story? Yun yung narrative form, no? Or do you want to write an essay? Most of them know how to write essays. And then I teach them that only. How to write the personal narrative, which later becomes later when they're more adult is the memoir. No? Story of a personal experience. And then the other one is an essay about an idea or a concept or an issue that they're interested in. And that's all I do. And I start with short writing exercises. For instance, an exercise that I do for the narrative, you begin with this, I make them remember, let's say they've been away from their hometown for a while, and then they come back. After studying, let's say, 1 year in the city, what's the first thing that you see? That's the first, that's the opening. And from there will come the rest of the piece. That's the emphasis on setting. Yes. Good afternoon.
Nakakaba po pala din. Nakakaba pong magtanong. So, I'm JC Pineda po from Pampanga, Masandal, Pampanga. So, nanggaling po ako sa isang remote area. Nagbangka po ako para makarating dito. So, pero sobrang ano din po ako dahil marami pong taga Bicol, Aklan. So, nag-fly sila. So, sana hindi ko masayang yung privilege na po na magtanong at may sense po yung question ko. So, love ko po yung creative nonfiction. So, alam po natin na creative nonfiction is presenting or writing factual information or real-life events in a creative way by utilizing elements of fiction. Now, I want to ask po, minsan po kasi guilty din po ako sa tendency na to. Like, di ba may mga times like feeling ko na pa-fabricate ko yung real-life events and situation in hopes of making it more appealing. Yung para bang guilty ako sometimes sa ganun, ma'am. And feeling ko, ano ba to? Is it okay na minsan i-alter natin yung certain situation para at least mapabongga or mapaganda siya? Di ba po minsan kasi pakiramdam ko, parang pangit, parang hindi masyadong, engaging or hindi masyadong nakakatusok ng puso yung nangyari. So, ang ginagawa ko, nag-a-add ako ng details na somehow I feel like siguro mali or napafabricate ko siya. So, ano po ba yun? Pwede po ba yun, ma'am, para lang masabi ko na creative ako? Or...
Okay. It's very hard to say na mali o tama. I think every writer decides that for himself. But I would follow one principle, and it is, I think it's okay to fabricate. For example, it happened long ago. Hindi mo na maalala kung anong kulay ng damit ng nanay mo when that happened. And so mag-invento ka na lang. That is okay because this does not change the story materially. So if it's a detail like that, or dialogue, di ba? Yung dialogue, do you remember what happened when you were 10 years old, no? So yung mga ganyan pwede yata. Pero you should not fabricate something that is central to the story. So for example, you met someone, even in journalism, no? Let's say you met someone, you interviewed him, and then para maging mas interesante yung nag-imbento ka na may sinabi siya na siya naniniwala sa politics ni President Duterte, halimbawa, hindi naman niya sinabi yun. That's very dangerous. And that is wrong in nonfiction. I'll tell you an example of myself when one time I fabricated something. I invented a person kasi I was writing about, I was writing a travel piece about Kathmandu. My husband my husband was working with UNICEF and he had a meeting in Kathmandu, Nepal, no? It's in Nepal. And I was there as a tourist lang, accompanying him. So sightseeing, tourist lang ako na sightseeing. Tapos nag-people power sa Manila. Yung 1986, people power, and we had no TV. We were at least hearing about it only on BBC radio. So I was trying to write about it. How can I write about this and what I felt at the time? So I invented a character. Kunwari may kasama ako. Si mga husband ko kasi nasa meeting all the time. So hindi ko siya makausap habang nagsa-sightseeing ako. So I invented a character na Pinay din. Nakasama ko, turista rin. So nung nadinig namin yung people power, kung ano yung sinabi namin sa isa't isa, yung in-invento ko ito. To be able to present 2 points of view, and one, the point of view of the Filipina who wanted to return upon hearing that the people power had taken place, and the other Filipina who did not want because she wanted an international life for herself. So I wanted to present those 2 points of view. Kesa sabihin ko lahat yung parang lecture, wala naman magbabasa nung ganun, di ba? So, at tapos incorporate pa sa travel story. Kunwari, they were just conversing as this was going on. But not everybody will agree with me, by the way. Some people will say anything fabricated does not belong in CNN. Nick Joaquin, by the way, I take my cue from Nick Joaquin, Nick Joaquin. Yung kanyang The Question of Heroes. It's a book that contains his biographies of all our major heroes. Nag-iimbento siya ng dialogue. Malay niya na gano'n nga nangyari yun, na one Luna strode into the room, ganyan. How did he know? That's invented. In his mind, he imagined the scene, but he did not invent the fact that it happened, that Juan Luna really went to that place. Now, what he said exactly and what he felt, he invented that part in the interest of more exciting writing. There's, do you know Virginia Woolf, the British? Yeah, okay. Virginia Woolf wrote a book called Flush, a Biography. You know who that Flush is? That is her dog. A biography. And it's not the biography of the dog. It's a story about her and her husband, told from the point of view of the dog. Inimbento yon. Kasi Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning, you remember? The famous lovers of history, they had a dog also. And she was alluding to that yun. Kasi Leonard was her editor and her publisher. So, yun. So may ganyan, yung mga... And there's a new, have you heard about fictocriticism? Fictocriticism, that's another new form. Nakasama rin yan sa nonfiction. This is combining fiction and criticism with nonfiction. So there's a beautiful piece, forget the name of the author, it was kind of invented by the Australian women writers. It's about a woman who was doing her thesis on Albert Camus. And she followed him. She went to the places where he had been. And in those places, it was in order to feel better what Camus' work was really like. No, parang she traced his footsteps. And she wrote this piece about that journey that she took and the man that she fell in love with, whom she believed was the incarnation of Camus, reincarnation of Camus, yun, while she critiqued his work. And that is fictocriticism, yun. You know, hanapin ko yung tapos ibibigay ko dito sa staff para padala niya sa inyo. Kasi I left a reading list, by the way. Kasi they told me, si Larissa Suarez, that some of you had requested titles, no, creative nonfiction that you can look up and teach. So I left, but I chose all Filipinos. I divided it into two. Yung isa before the 1990s, and then the other one is after the 1990s. So yung before, kasama dun yung mga Nick Joaquin, Kirima Polotan, Gregorio Brillantes, yung mga biggies. And then pati yung mga parang standard text, no? And then yung after the 1990s, kasama yung pinakabata na. Iba rin silang sumulat eh. Yung mga makakaedad ninyo na yon. Yung mga Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer. You familiar with that book? The writer is a doctor, medical doctor. The book is Even Ducks Get Liver Cancer. And then, marami iba-ibang klaseng mga. I find it very exciting. Kasi you can do what you want. Yes.
Butch Pang po, alumnus creative writing. We have here Mindoro, Naga, saan pa isa? Pampanga. I also come from very far view, Quezon City. Ano po, I think a lot of us here would echo with this question. Could you give us tips on how to teach tone? Because it's so freaking difficult to teach tone to students, especially mention na rin po ni Sir Jim kanina about some students who have difficulty with imagination. So they have weak imagination. So
I know you also asked, one of you asked Charlson the same question, no? Oo. Mahirap ituro ang tone kasi it's so personal, no? I'll tell you how I do it. I give them an example, no? I tell them, okay, let's say you have a mother who is, let's say, 50 years old or 55 years old or 60 years old. And do you know what a DI is? DI, dance instructor. There was a time na usong-uso mga DI, di ba? Ngayon hindi na masyado, pero there was a time. So let's say you learn, yung mga DI, mga bata yon usually, no? Sino naman ang magdi-DI na matanda, no? So they are young. So let's say you hear or you learn that your mother is having an affair and has fallen in love with her DI, and he is 27 years old. What will you feel about it? What will you think of your mother? Okay, you know, they will answer quite honestly. I asked it recently of my students, graduate students na, so mature na yon. Ang sagot ng isa, disgusted. Yung isa, I would be shocked. Puro negative. Okay, and then tatanungin ko, bakit? Why do you feel that way? Because I have a friend whose mother is in love with her DI and is taking him abroad with her. And she feels happy for her mother, that she has found happiness. Diba? Who cares if he's 27 or 30 or 90? If she's happy, I'm happy. That's the tone. Now, if you know what you feel about the subject here being the love affair between your mother and the young man, then your tone will reflect it. The way you write it, lalabas dun yung tone. So what you can tell your students, what you have to settle in your head first is, what do you feel about that subject? So for instance, they're writing about, give me an example of the stuff you make your students write. Mahirap kasi ako yung examples ko pang graduate school eh. Ano yung mga subject na binibigay ninyong assignment sa mga estudyante ninyo? Give me an example. Ano? Yung crush nila. Isa lang ang attitude dun sa crush nila. Di siyempre mahal nila. Huwag yun. Yung ano? A parent who died. Ano rin yan? Grief, ano? Something that's more difficult to write about. Yung sigurong breakup. Okay, breakup. That's the subject. What do you feel about it? You ask them now. And then they will tell you. And then you ask them, okay, that's what you feel. How do you convey it? That will be the tone. Lalabas yun dun sa tone. Katulad itong kay Dalisay. What did he think about his father? Halatang-halata, di ba? In the things that he said, the images that he picked, yung image of the father sitting in a parang yung restaurant table in his carless garage. Doon siya nag-opisina, di ba? Writing letters for his neighbors who did not have the words. Ang ganda-ganda, di ba? But that's because in his own mind, it's very clear what he felt towards his father. So lumalabas in everything that he wrote. So the idea is for them to get clearly in their heads. Oh, and the other thing you have to teach them is honesty. In creative nonfiction, do not be interested in projecting an image, which they are, because of social media, di ba, they're always projecting images. Try to be honest to what you really are. Of course, they are young, so maybe even that being honest, they're not so sure what that means. I admire you and that you teach young people, yung bata talaga, mas mahirap tingin ko. I tried it. When I was living in Burma, I accepted a job teaching high school in the international high school. Creative writing, ha? And half of them were not English speakers. They were from different countries. So I learned how to simplify everything I was going to do and teach. You know, one way I did it through music. That's one way of teaching tone, by the way. Sino nagtanong ng tone? I would play music and then ask them, anong tono niyan? Alam nila yon. Although at that time I was teaching, he's dead already, pero yun naman, hindi ko kilala itong mga bagong singers eh. Si George Michael, he was singing different corner. I played the tape for them and I asked them, what emotion is he showing in that song? For now, if I did it again, I would use David Bowie. Oh, diba? Mahirap. Kasi hindi mo maintindihan kung minsan ang sinasabi niya, di ba? But he's my favorite rock star. David. Anything else? Balik ako sa iyo. Sabi muna. Go ahead. Was there someone raising his hand there? After them, no?
Hello. Okay. My question is, how do we navigate giving feedback to students who write about very personal and a little bit heavier comments in a way that elevates their craft much better and navigating that with their personal feelings about what they want?
Actually, that's very hard. If the subject matter that they wrote about is something very personal, as you said, no? Actually, I had a student one time who was a very good writer. And then she submitted something that was not as well written as she usually was. In fact, I could not get what it was trying to say. Parang, on the one hand, she was telling me the story. On the other hand, she seemed to be covering it up. So I surmised that the subject was something she could not face. So I called her privately and I asked her, can I ask you, what are you trying to write about here? Is this incest? And she said yes. So, yeah. So I said to her, are you ready to write about this, you think? Or would it not be better that you talk about this with your doctor? Kasi I'm not also qualified to handle how you deal with trauma of that person. So my suggestion was, maybe this is not yet the time to write the story. Because I have encountered other students who wrote about the same subject and did it well. Kasi kaya na nila. So you have to make timpla. And by the way, I chose to speak to her privately. I did not ask her in class. So, yun. Kung yung mga first love lang, pwede yun, kahit na nakikinig lahat, di ba? Okay lang. Oh, by the way, no, if you find a student who can write a funny story about her first love, that's really good. You encourage it. Because that means they've gotten over it. They have seen how funny first love can be. Yeah, so doon muna, no? And then I'll get to you.
Hi, good afternoon po. Sir Kil from Lipa City. You know what? Like in all the literature courses that we're teaching in senior high school, this is what I'm not picking up as my teaching load because, like, I don't know how really to put my students into the nature of design. Now that I have heard your lecture, what's building up on my head now is essay equals creative nonfiction. Am I correct?
No, essay is one type of creative nonfiction.
It's like it's a subgenre of the bigger umbrella creative.
Yeah.
And I think it's belonging to the expository.
Yes.
Right. Thank you. Another question. Like for the narrative form, like if I'm gonna look back to what Delisa did on the work, like he's using stream of consciousness. Yeah. Is it the usual technique that's being used on?
No, it's not used. It's
just one of them.
Yes, one of them. You can use, there's one answer. all the techniques of fiction can be used for creative nonfiction.
Alright.
So dialogue, stream of consciousness, yeah, internal monologue, lahat
Okay.
yan pwede.
But it looks like stream of consciousness becomes like the favorite technique they're using.
No.
Or I'm also like short-sighted right there.
You do that, you mean? Or you asking me?
Yeah. On
Me?
your in your point of view.
No, I don't use stream of consciousness.
Oh, okay. Alright. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Who was the one raising it?
Good afternoon, Ma'am. Ferdinand po from La Union. So I traveled like 6 hours to
Wow.
get here.
I
And
appreciate
yes,
it.
ma'am, it's all worth it talaga. And dami kong kwento kasi I'm celebrating my 15th year, ma'am, as a DepEd teacher. And yeah, di ba? 15 years. 15 years, ma'am, and tomorrow sa school we'll be celebrating parang World Teachers Day. I have to leave, ma'am, the festivities in school 4 days. Sabi ko, it's all worth it. It's the best World Teachers Day gift ever. Di ba? Yun, ma'am. And kwento lang po, once again, ma'am, well, I'm talking to the patron saint. Pero sabi naman, hindi raw patron, goddess daw po ng creative nonfiction. Di ba? So, confirm na natin. Goddess of creative nonfiction. Yes, ma'am, by all means. I just would like to thank you, ma'am, because I'm not a poet, sir. I majored in English po, but I'm not the person ma'am was talking about a while back. I majored in English, pero I'm not a poet, I'm not a dramatist, I'm not even a fiction writer. But when my teacher presented to me a reader by Cristina, Pantoja, Hidalgo, way back in 2003, I was in second year college. I was redeemed. Talagang redeemer ka, ma'am, sa akin. Kanina goddess, ngayon redeemer na po. Oo. Kasi ma'am, totoo naman po kasi I don't know where to go. I don't know what to do. I know that I am a writer. I want to be a writer because I'm an English major. So I ought to write. Be able, how could I possibly teach my students to write if I myself, I don't know how to write. So thank you very much, ma'am, for having written a reader by you. Talagang, which introduced me to a lot of writers, including Jessica Zafra, which eventually introduced me to Alfred Yuson, Jose Delisay, and then Rica Bolipata Santos, because they constantly mention you, ma'am, in their articles and all. So thank you very much, ma'am, talaga. Sabi ko, best World Teachers Day gift ever itong pagkapasa ko. And I know I won't be here, I won't be up here again. So lulubusin ko na talaga, ma'am. Ngayon lang ako magsasalita. Kasi talagang, wow.
Akala ko may question.
Yes, ma'am, meron po. Dalawa, ma'am. Kasi I'm approaching the altar po eh. Di ba ni Ma'am Cristina Pantoja Hidalgo? So it's a religious experience talaga, ma'am. Nung pumasok kayo kanina, ma'am, sabi ko nga, oh, my youth flashed before my very eyes.
Wow.
Tapos nagsalita, tapos nagpa-autograph ako, ma'am. Overwhelming. Tapos nagsalita kayo, ma'am. Religious experience po talaga, ma'am. Gumaling po. Kanina, bulag ako kanina, ma'am. Ngayon nakakakita na ako.
Siguro enjoy na enjoy sa yung mga estudyante mo. Kasi
Sana
para
nga,
ka
ma'am.
nagdadrama, di ba?
Yes, ma'am.
Performance.
Opo. Ma'am, my question is, number one, segue. So my question talaga ako, valid po talaga. Talagang, opo, teacher po ako. Teacher pala ako. Ma'am, question number one, this is for me and for my campus journalists. How do you end? How do you end an article po? Parang what is the best way that this is the proper ending for a piece. Ganun po kasi ang hirap. And then second question, ma'am, I have potential writers po talaga, but they are very, very promising writers. As in, they're better than I was when I was their age. But they don't want to write. They don't want to commit. Ma'am, how could I possibly encourage them? Yun lamang po.
Okay.
Thank
First
you, ma'am.
question is the easiest to answer.
Yes.
If you have a copy of my, kasi I cannot say there's one way of ending a story. There are many different ways. In my book, Creative Nonfiction, a manual, there's a chapter on endings. And there are examples. Iba-ibang klase. Pwedeng quotation, pwedeng go around and you reiterate something, yung ganyan. So maraming iba-ibang klase, no? Now the second one, I don't quite understand the question. They are afraid to commit. To commit to what? Your students who do not wish to write are afraid to commit to what? But why? No, I mean, no, I cannot answer unless I know the circumstances of why they don't want to join. Because usually, I mean, my experience, student writers are very eager to join the school paper. They take an exam. Here, may interview pa eh. Pati sa UST, yung mga mag-a-apply para sa varsitarian, ang very rigorous examination and they're willing to take it. So, bakit ayaw nitong mga estudyante kaya?
Pagkakaalala ko, ma'am, wala. Sa public school, wala, doesn't affect the grade. Wala na siyang credit.
Okay.
Eh, sayang naman po yung talent kung hindi po sila ma-expose, hindi sila ma-train. Ganun po. So, ano po yung pwedeng encouraging words to convince them? Subukan mo kasi sayang yung talent.
I do not know the answer actually. Yeah, I'm afraid I don't know the answer because I always knew I wanted to be a writer. I never had any other choice. 9 years old pa lang ako, alam ko na I want to be a writer. I used to write newspapers for the family, handwritten lang, and then naglalagay ako ng yung ruler ba, gumagawa ako ng mga column, tapos meron akong news story. Today, Lola went to the market. Then later, I wrote a novel in a notebook, handwritten. So ako, wala akong ibang talent. I don't know how to sing, I don't know how to cook, I don't know how to do any kind of sport. So I had no choice. Kailangan talent writing. So I don't know how to encourage people who think I will only. Maybe the thing is to ask them whether they think the point of studying is getting grades. Is that the only reason why you're studying? You can ask them. Yun lang ba? Yun. Kasi, as you said, they are losing out on an experience that's really valuable. I started out in the school paper when I was a kid. Then got promoted slowly from reporter, features editor to editor-in-chief. Then I went to university, the same thing. So, yeah. I thought you meant something else. Kasi my students are always telling me they don't want to commit, but they mean to people or to ideas. Yeah. Kasi sabi ko, ano bang ibig sabihin nung sila? Naging sila. It's so blah. Why don't you want to define it? Why don't you want to give it a name? Are you scared? It's interesting though. Why they, kaya nga, what are they afraid of? Of the trauma. Yeah, well, that's for a psychologist to determine, but I have noticed it. In fact, I've asked them, why do you feel more comfortable online when the people that you are dealing with, you don't even know if they are what they say they are? Diba? It's all invented. Why are you happier there than in the real world? And one of them gave me the answer quite candidly. He said, because ma'am, I don't like the kind of person I am. And online, I can be anything I choose to be. That's very honest. And I'm like, okay, I understand. But it's very unreliable because at some point, you have to confront the persons you are fooling with the truth. Diba? You are who you are. So, yeah, pero that takes a psychiatrist to deal with it. But I think with many of them, that's part of it. They're not satisfied with what they are, and so they are through social media, they're able to invent a character. You know, you could encourage them to write about that experience with the net, which is, some of it ends happily. I have a friend who married the guy whom she met on Facebook. Diba? Who else? Over there? Do you also come from far away?
Good afternoon, Doc. I'm from Davao City. My name is
Oh,
Celine.
okay. Davao.
The travel was also 6 hours, so it's okay. Same lang sa akin. I have two questions. If it's okay. I just want to have an idea of what you think. But you have existing practices. I just want to know. So,
Relax.
if you have only a maximum of 5 subgenres of CNS to teach within one semester, which 5?
In fact, I will not go for 5. Within one semester, I will go for 2 at most. Yeah, why confuse them? And I just want, and I asked for only one. The final requirement is just one piece, but they can choose between 2, and they can try their hand at 2: the personal narrative, which is a memoir really, and the essay. That's all.
So
I don't go to the other.
So you will be arranging the semester according to the different approaches. Like
Different approaches? What do you mean?
The ones in your book.
No, those are not the approaches. Those are the elements. Oh, no, those have to be in there. They have to be in there.
Thank you for that. So that personal and memoir.
Yeah.
Second
No.
question.
The personal narrative is the memoir. The essay is the other one.
Oh.
So one expository, one narrative.
Second question. With teaching creative nonfiction, is it better to like have the students write several types of enough, or just focus on developing throughout the semester, continually developing?
Yeah, as I said, I think that's answered by my answer to your first question. They will get confused if you make them write in one semester 5 different subgenres. Masyadong mahirap yun. Oo, just 2 is good enough.
Thank you so
Alright.
much.
You're welcome. Okay. Yes. Finish na? Okay.
Good afternoon.
30 minutes pa. Yeah.
Good afternoon po, ma'am. Po ako ganun kalayo, taga Rizal lang po ako. Ang question ko po, naisip ko lang ngayon, it might be stupid, pero what's the difference between non-fiction narrative, especially with fabricated elements, and fiction that is based on real life?
Okay. Well, I will answer that first, and then I will refer you to a writer. Yeah. Well, as I said earlier, in general, you should not fabricate with nonfiction, no? The basic element. So the people that you, let's say you have a main character, no? And that character is, let's say, an uncle who's a gambler. Do not invent things about his character. That kind of fabrication is not allowed. But if you do not remember what he said on a particular day and you invent dialogue, okay lang yun. Provided you stay true to character. In other words, you invent dialogue, but there are dialogue that he is likely to have said. Do not invent, for example, if he's a, what did I say he was? A gambler. I said gambler, no? Oh. Mahirap yata yung gambler. Let's say he's a banker, okay? You can invent dialogue which has to do with business, diba? But do not invent dialogue that will have him quoting Gabriel Garcia Marquez, for example, because that's not likely to happen. So the essential things should stay. And then you can fabricate minor things. Now, about the other part of the question, what is the difference between this and fiction that is based on real life? No different. Pareho lang yun. Kaya lang yung fiction, you have, I don't know kasi different writers, we all draw from our lives, I think, no? We all draw from our own lives, our own experiences, but we draw different things. So I'm not sure what your question really refers to. Hindi ko alam. They're fiction. I think this is the thing. You just take the writer's word for it. Kung sinabi niyang fiction yon, then it's fiction. Even if you happen to know that this person also has an uncle who is a drunkard. But the character in the story is invented for that story. So that's unlike ako, if I tell you it's fiction, maniwala ka. Diba? Pag actually, I'll tell you, no? I mean, maybe the women will understand this more than the men. There are certain subjects I don't wish to write about. So, for example, I never write explicit sex scenes. My friends joke me, they joke about it. Ano pa yan? That, tapos may anak na. Yun, di ba? Yeah, that's I'm repressed. I belong to a generation that was repressed. No? So, ganun talaga, no? But, when I wanted to write about certain things, kasi gusto ko talaga silang isulat, ginawa kong fairy tale. Half of my fiction is fairy tales. That is protective covering. You know why? Most people, when they read fairy tales, they think it's not true. Diba? No, biopics are different. Biopics are movies to begin with. I don't think so. I watched the biopic of, what's his name? Freddie Mercury, Bohemian Rhapsody. That was quite true to his life. In the biopic? Ganun ba? Hindi ko yun alam. I'm not into film. I don't know ayun si Charlson Ong. Sana kanina ninyo tinanong siya. Diba? Oo. Although, I remember listening to an interview of the band Queen, the remaining band members, no, the guitarist and the drummer. And they said, now of course it doesn't have absolutely everything about Freddie Mercury's life. We didn't want to tell that story. We wanted to tell the story of the singer and his music. What he did on the side, that's not part of the story. And they also focused on Mary, diba? Do you know the story of Freddie Mercury? Mary, the girl who was his fiancé. He was engaged to her, and then he told her he was gay. No, I think he told her he was bisexual. And she said, no, you're gay. But she accepted that. And they remained friends forever. And after he died, he left most of his fortune to her. What's the truth in that story? In the movie, they said that. They heightened her role in it. And people who were criticizing it were saying, hindi naman totoo, ang dami-daming boyfriend niyang si Freddie Mercury. Totoo naman yun, pero that woman was special. And the proof of it is that when he died, he left half of his fortune to her. And the other half, I think, to his brother and sister, I think, or something. And recently, she had an auction sale. And his piano went for, I think, $2 million. The piano where imagine all of that money is now hers. So, as he said, in an interview, dami ko pala si Freddie Mercury. Sabi niya dun sa interview, under other circumstances, you would have been my wife. You are, in fact, my common law. I love that story. Anyway, di yata yun ang tinatanong mo pero hindi ko masagot yung ano ba yung difference ng story that is based on your life, story that is fiction but draws on your life. My answer to it is actually, most stories do, unless it is fantasy. And even fantasy sometimes draws on the author's life. In fact, I remember, this is a movie. Who's that guy who played what's the name of the actor? Anthony Hopkins. Anthony Hopkins has said that for all his roles, in all the movies he has made, he draws on his life. Is he a cannibal? Hindi naman siguro. but he understands enough about it that he can draw on something to produce it.
Hello po. Good afternoon.
Sinulat mo.
You mentioned a while ago na we appreciate a writer who is honest in telling the CNF and parang it's making him vulnerable. So while I was listening to it a while ago, I was thinking how much a person can share in a CNF. And my question po, hindi po yun po iniisip ko. Ang question ko is regarding on ethics.
Yeah.
Number one, if for example if you are telling a story about a family or a family secret, do you need to ask permission to the members of the family to be for them to be included in the story? And a while ago po sabi nyo, gagawin nyo lang fiction para direkta. But what if the writer wants it to be non-fiction and you are telling a character who is villain in your life? And of course, you cannot ask permission from that person. Will you name the person with the real name, or will you just name the person the person who must not be named? Ganun po.
Okay. The way I do it, I cannot answer for everybody, so I can just say what I do. No, if I write about anyone in my family who is alive, I ask their permission first. In fact, I show them the piece. By family here, I mean my daughters in particular. I have 2 grown daughters who do not live here. So when I include them in CNF, even if it is very harmless naman, like I went to visit them, ganyan, I have them read it. So that, and I tell them, if there's anything here that I got wrong, for example, one of them is married to an American who is Jewish, is that something that he would want mentioned or not? So anything that you're uncomfortable with, just tell me and I will remove it. Now about other people, yeah, I changed the name. Not if they are big personalities, if they are, yeah, they're public figures, I mention them, and then I don't ask their permission, they're public figures. And usually naman, they're not intimate things, no? I just heard them speak or something. But if, for instance, it's recently I just wrote something, I put it on Facebook about my first trip to Japan. And this young man that I met in the tour, I changed his name. And I was asked why. Baka ayaw niya di ba? He might not want it. If it's something personal and it's a real person, I just change it. Someone was raising their hand at the back. Umalis na yata siya in disgust. It's never gonna get to me. Ayoko na. Ayoko.
Afternoon po. This is more to express yung anxieties ng students na when writing CNF. Parang, ito natatawa ko, anecdotal. One of my students, when we were writing personal narrative, they told me, Miss, parang, I feel like my work is not as good as my classmates. Because they feel like, they felt like you have to earn yung writing of personal narrative. Something significant has to happen to you in order to be able to write something meaningful. Then this student told me, happy ako sa relationship ko. My parents are still alive. Most of my grandparents are still alive. I haven't experienced like illness. So, ayun, parang discouraged siya to write it. Kasi unlike the other classmates na may mga ganong experiences, wala siyang ganon. So that's like the worry that they have. I observed here, like a few batches of my students. So earlier you mentioned about the insight. When we write it should be insightful. I think yun yung word niya. So parang we have like thoughts about that. Ano kaya mag-cultivate ng insight? If it's someone writing na they feel like they live the sheltered life.
Okay. First of all, I think you should disabuse them of thinking that the only thing that is worth writing about is something tragic. A trauma, mga ganyan. You know? For example, think of Jane Austen. She was writing in the 19th century, di ba? And up to today, we are watching movies made about life that no longer exists, no? Completely different kind of society. You can give her that example na it's not true that only bad news and tragic events are worth writing about. Any life is, and Bien Gonzalez used to say to us and to his students, there is a story that only you can tell. What is it? So in your own life, be it happy or unhappy, you are the only one who has lived it. You are unique. So there are certain things that you can talk about that only you can talk about. And it may be something that is seemingly mundane, like cooking, for example, or pets, or I don't know, the way you dress, your choice of clothes or whatever. You can write about that. But before you write about it, think about it. And then ask yourself, why am I writing about this? What do I really want to say about it? Kasi yun ang insight. Although my students, one time, I said, deadline na, bakit kayo hindi nagsasubmit? Are you familiar with the word epiphany? Sa fiction, yun, di ba? Nandun yung insight, di ba? May epiphany. So sabi nung estudyante ko, kasi ma'am, hindi pa kami nag-e-epiph. Diba? Hindi pa nila alam kung ano ba, how do you make this damn character have an epiphany, di ba? Hindi pa kami nag-e-epiph, kaya hindi kami makapag-submit. Sige, dalian mo yung pag-epiph na yan. Sabi ko. Kasi tapos na ang semester. Anyway, I know it's not easy. But I think if you think hard about it, anything that happens to you has a meaning in your life. You discover it later, maybe. Are you teaching high school or college?
Senior high.
Senior high school. Pwede na yan. Thank you po. Maybe I should add na kung junior high school sila, baka naman maghirap kayo. I don't know I've not thought, di ba? Kaya na rin. O kayo, you know it better than me. You are able to make them understand what insight means. That's good. That's fine.
Hello, ma'am. Good afternoon. I'm Jericho from La Union. This is in relation to the question of ma'am from Davao City regarding the on how are we going to choose and what are we going to choose in terms of the different types of CNF. Because we are following a curriculum guide, and in our that's why I asked her a while back if she's teaching tertiary or in senior high school. And she said senior high school. And how about the curriculum guide? If we're going to choose,
wait a minute. Your curriculum requires you to teach 5 kinds of CNF.
Yes, ma'am. And then, ma'am, we also in our institution we also have an instructional material from a publishing company that we really have to teach everything because magiging kalaban namin yung mga bosses, yung mga parents, yung boss na, yung mga boss, yung parents kasi po they purchase that instructional material tapos hindi mo ituturo yung ano. So yun yung mga nagiging problema namin. So if we're going to choose some of those types of creative nonfiction, ano pong pwede naming gawin sa iba? Ayun. Na para magkaroon pa rin ng yung mga bata na sense na naituro namin yun. Kasi, for example, pipili kami, for example, yung personal, tapos we will, the others will be, parang hindi,
ano yung others? Ano
like
yung
sa essay, ma'am. Kasi yung, for example, ang napili namin is ituro yung memoir and yung, siguro yung biography. Yung
biography, full-length biography.
Nandun kasi ma'am sa ano namin,
Biography is one
sa libro.
book.
Yes, ma'am. So, pero since alam naman namin na gano'n, hindi namin sila pinapasulat. So, parang tinuturo lang namin.
Dinadaya lang ninyo.
Yes po.
I'm with you.
Yeah. So,
you know, I
syempre,
have only one thing to say. The people who are behind that thing are dumb.
Agree.
It is
Ayun,
It is
ma'am.
not possible
Yes,
to
ma'am.
teach 5 kinds of CNF in one semester.
Yes po. And typically, ma'am, yung mga type of creative nonfiction pa is nandun sa finals, kung saan napakaliit na ng oras na ituro yon. So, nahihirapan din kami mga guro in reality. Yes.
Hindi, pwede bang
Pero in reality kasi po,
have a
mahirap po
question.
siyang ituro because I once taught CNF, nahirapan po akong ituro yung mga types.
Pwede ba yung pag-usapan na lang sa klase? Pero yung actual writing, one type lang.
Parang internal agreement.
Kasi I don't see how it can be done. It's not
Yes po.
feasible. Not even in college.
And off the record.
Bagay din sa activities, halimbawa,
Parang meron lang siyang look for a traveler. I don't want to
you know, the problem with that is it's very superficial and it encourages superficiality. Sabi ko, analyze traveler with non-content.
So,
Subvert it
talaga,
na
it's
lang.
really an internal agreement.
Yeah, get together with your peers, figure out ways that it's not working the way.
Okay. Thank you very much, ma'am. It's from Dr. Hidalgo. Thank you po.
I think we have time for at least one more question, or at most one question. Any takers?
Good afternoon po. Vincent po from Naga City po. Ma'am, in research writing, 5 chapters. Hindi, I'm just kidding. Hindi naman yung ano ko po. Although, what I would like to clarify, ma'am, I'm looking at your discussion, ma'am, because I don't really teach creative nonfiction. But I'm seeing now that when the elements that you have discussed actually could be also incorporated in research writing, particularly for qualitative research. For one, the use self-reflexivity, use of vignettes, for example. These things are, I suppose, also under creative nonfiction that can also be incorporated in research writing. I would just like to clarify. There's this misconception that when it comes to research writing, it should be impersonal, objective, and research writing is objective, highly objective, technical even, impersonal. But I can see that creative nonfiction elements can actually be introductory to certain parts of the research
Oh,
writing.
yeah.
Like, for example, writing results when it comes to synthesizing the narratives of people that you have interviewed. So, am I right that I am seeing that I could also use this as a springboard to introduce or to blur the lines between um, academic and or technical writing and then creative writing.
Yeah, I agree with you,
Thank you.
actually. Yeah. Thank you.
So thank you very much once again to our participants. On behalf of the Likhaan UP Institute of Creative Writing, we would like to present this certificate of appreciation to Ma'am Cristina Pantoja Hidalgo. Everyone, let's give her a round of applause. Thank you, ma'am.
Little token.
Can we also get a picture, ma'am? Yeah, the photographer will be stationed on the stage para kasama yung participants. Seminar workshop for who? God, you are such a wonderful audience. Thank you very much. So congratulations on making it past the first day. Before we send you guys out, I'd like to give you some general reminders lang. You have your kits. That's the tote bag with the shirt. I need you guys to wear the shirt tomorrow. For the people who are staying in Manila from outside of Manila,